just stuck here dreaming. Back at the bottom of the ocean. I'm at the bottom of the sea. I'll stay down, down. I'm just stuck here in a dream. I'm at the bottom of the sea. I'll stay down, down. I'm just stuck here in a dream.
Morning, Sergeant Major.
How do you know what kind of goddamn day it is?
Beautiful morning, Sergeant Major.
Are you a fucking weatherman now?
You're listening to Sergeant's Time on WTF Nation Radio.
Live from the functional WTF Nation Radio. And of course, those Army WTF moments. I'm your host, Ice, tonight. I also have, sitting in the gunner seat, my man Shipwreck. How you doing, man?
No, I'm doing good. Watching this dumpster fire.
Yeah. Watching this dumpster fire. Let me lower the music down. I know I'm getting too loud. I'm getting all excited and stuff like that. Oh, man. So tonight, we have a guest. We have two guests. I'm pumped. You notice all the scenery now is all CGI, cyber, AI looking? That's what I'm talking about. That's right. We got August Cole and Pete Singer, the writers of Ghost Fleet, Burn In, and Like War. Man, I am pumped. We're going to be talking about this influence stuff and AI and how it's used for propaganda on the electronic medium, also known as a fifth domain. God, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be epic. This is like, I posted this earlier, and everybody knows that Tom Clancy was like the main dude when it came to military type thrillers, right? I mean, there's like, you kind of have Tom Clancy. You read all of Tom Clancy's Exploring of and all that. Well, these are. Go ahead.
I watched the movies.
Well, yeah, but did you read the books?
I skipped the books.
If you see, that's what I'm saying. Well, if you read the books are. Tom Clancy had this knack of straight writing all this, writing everything. He had access, and just on research, people were wondering, did this guy have access to stuff that he should not have access to? There's even investigations on Tom Clancy on some of the access that he had. On what oh yeah, dude, they're like wanting to know how he knew about this information or how he wrote about this information. He just did open source research. He read the books. So, in my eyes, these two authors, to me, in the land of the fifth domain, in the world of the fifth domain, these are the Tom Clancy's of this topic. Especially when it comes to what's happening right now. We're going to talk about all that stuff. We're going to talk about the stories that's in Burn In, and also Ghost Fleet, and then Like War. But I'm pumped to have these gentlemen on to discuss. They got some pretty good creds. They got some pretty good, I've seen them on their Zooms and podcasts, and they don't bullshit around. They've even asked me some questions. So this is kind of going to be like a back and forth interview like I'm going to get interviewed and I'm going to interview them. So it's kind of like question Q&A back and forth to kind of get everybody on seeing what's happening on the world. And right now, this is the perfect time according, right now, WTF Nation decides, right? 2020. We have individuals that are using the electronic medium to influence, stuff that you're just like, wow, they're influencing. This is crazy. This is some of the stuff that you can't expect. You wouldn't expect back in the day. I didn't expect that stuff back in the day.
New technology.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
Modern time.
Right. Yeah. Information warfare is out there. That's right. Everybody got a Furby. I got a Furby. Oh yeah. See, a lot of things like that. This is wicked. Yeah. Oh yeah. The background. Thank you. The background is purely for the effect, and I'm just playing around, and I stayed up a little bit last night, and I was working on this stuff, and I just kind of this is kind of fitting for the motif and for the subject at hand. But anyways, so that's going to be at 2100 Eastern Standard Time. For those of you that are listening globally, thank you so much. We appreciate your listenership out in Taipei, Taiwan, Australia, Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia. Seeing the pings out there, thank you so much. We love you guys and gals for listening in. And of course here in the continental United States. First off, I gotta break out the bad news stuff, man. I have to break out the bad news. Real quick, some of the things that happened over the last. This is some discussion that we have when it comes to how do I say this? How the media in the military, or how public affairs individuals discuss with timelines in the military. and I had this conversation off to the side about public affairs and professionals, and again, public affairs is a new. It's not new. It's just the techniques in which to relay the information is new, and I think everybody, when it comes to those types of information related capabilities, need to kind of like catch up. Well, actually, they don't need kind of. They need to catch up because our adversaries are killing us in that aspects. So real quick, there's a couple of stories about that have come out that I kind of went back and forth with the PAO. Not really back and forth. It was a good discussion. And the discussion is that the soldier that was missing was found hanged. His body was found. Yeah, the Fort Hood soldier that was missing. You not been paying attention to the news, man?
I've been paying attention. I just didn't know all the details.
Well,
I just know he passed away and found dead.
Yeah, he was found dead. So real quick, just to give you guys to some of the stories about what was happening is about Sergeant Elder Fernandez, and was not seen since August 17th. The chain of command obviously has stated already that we can confirm there was an open investigation of abusive sexual contact involving Sergeant Fernandez, and he takes allegations seriously. Now, there's been a press conference in the last couple days. I think that the delivery of messaging should be, and we even spoke to our own PAO, and then within U.S. Army WTF moments in our own and WTF Nation Radio, we do have PAOs and we do have PA professionals that are kind of like my guiding light to where hey man, or is it, how would you do this, or how is this broadcast? And some of the questions that I ask them are not to shoot them. It's just a legit timeline of information. Fort Hood put out a tweet and posted on social media that they had they just given an update saying that that this was no foul play has been suspected, and that's all they put out. No foul play has been suspected. Now, and this is what the kind of point of contention is like, are we real quick to throw out PAO information? Are we really quick to put that information out too fast just to appease the masses, or to kind of like, I don't know, save face or whatever? But I think the timing is that as soon as they said no foul play was suspected, and then just after that they found Sergeant Fernandez hanging from a tree.
Ouch.
The timing of it was to me just a little bit, dude. You didn't have to say shit. I mean, what did you have to say anything, or was it necessary to say something? I think that would have been a little bit better just to have we're currently working with local authorities. And we'll keep you guys in, we will keep the families informed and blah, blah, blah. This is a current investigation at this time. It just seems like when it comes to Fort Hood, we're getting our information faster from local law enforcement and Natalie Quam, who's been on the show before, by the way, to talk about the Ferris Doctrine. And we've had her with Sergeant First Class Richard Stateskull, U.S. Army Special Operations, Green Beret, and a former Marine who's had a misdiagnosis of cancer, which is now terminal. So, which, by the way, hey, Rich, just wish you well, brother, hang in there. I think personally, we could have waited. The PA environment should have slowed down on its real quick to get the information out there. Did we have to? Did we have to jump the gun and just put that out?
No, they didn't have to. They're just trying to build the trust again with the public.
Is it building trust though, man? I mean, is it kind of like the family that have said specifically that there was no information that was given to the family from the chain of command, and the chain of command says they've been working with the families. It's a touchy subject. It's a touchy subject because what's been going on with the Vanessa Guillen case and the Gregory Morales case, and other individuals and other soldiers that have been missing on Fort Hood, and then this just cascading to this. So just recently after the results and details of the investigation for Vanessa Guillen, and this happened, of course. This is kind of like what's the
connection?
Yeah, well, and I want to say the connection. It kind of makes it a, how do I say this? What do you do at this point? Basically, I mean, I don't say this, but it's a question. What do you do? What does a chain of command do? What does a command do at this point to either, okay, you're not going to help, you're not going to please everybody, and now with the way social media is working even more, the commands are getting pressured, and is it a public affairs officer or public affairs responsibility on Facebook or social media to put that information out? Did the PAO jump the gun? Did the PAO, was just trying to take care of their commander and just did it on their own? It kind of.
Or were they told to do it?
Or were they told to do it right? And everybody knows that our PAOs operate the public portion of the WTF Nation Radio. I don't believe it or not, I don't touch our social media when it comes to the PAO stuff. I will ask. I gotta ask our PAO shop and social media shop. Hey, I'm gonna put this on here. Is that cool? Is it alright if I do that? Or they'll ask me, hey, boss, can you post this for us? We're doing some shit. I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And I'll do it. Most PAO shops are or social media accounts are handled by PAO shops. Some of them are individual commander accounts that actually will work it.
So you're saying you leave it to the experts to handle the PA stuff. You just tell them, hey, this is what's going on, and do what you got to do.
No, I got it. Right. I mean, because if I put my stuff on there, I'll probably end up burning down freaking. I'll probably end up burning down the shop. You know what I mean? Because I'll put some shit and I'll put like a whatever, go fuck yourself and something like that, and they're like, WTF Radio said go fuck yourself, even though it was me using that. You know what I mean? When I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, or have had some questions come across or whatever. Because the WTF Nation and U.S. Army, the WTF Nation Radio, they get the guns on there, jumped on, and they'll sit there and say, hey, yeah, well, if you didn't post that, maybe you shouldn't have So I'm kind of thinking, hey, well, I don't want to
slow the roll.
What?
Slow your roll time?
Yeah. I think you said like a roll. I'm sorry. I'm like a roll. What?
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, it's slow your roll.
Right.
Right. You have to kind of be careful, be kind of cognizant now, because you just say something to a PAO in a press release and it's in a newspaper and that's it. Will somebody buy that newspaper? Well, no. The electronic medium now is the digital newspaper is Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Name your platform that your unit is on. You're going to get destroyed. There's going to be individuals that ask for critiques and ask for feedback that will block people. I'm not naming names of certain organizations that will block people when they don't like what's being said about the command or like what's being said about the organization. Even though under law you can't block anybody. You have to keep your channels open. Because then it looks like you're exactly that. Recruiter Times. It's required reading. Like war should be PAO reading. God, this is an awesome subject to talk about because it gets into the metrics and it gets into the narratives. We start talking about narratives. And I love this. This kind of subject right here is all about the narratives. Narrative good, narrative bad. But narrative good and narrative bad to whom? To whom are you broadcasting your narrative to? That is what's your deal for your narrative? What's your deal for your what's your angle? You're kind of like, what is your angle, man? What's your angle?
Whatever angle I feel like tonight.
Well, is it what I'm saying? But is it personal? You know what I mean? If it's emotional, because you're talking. I mean, we're talking about policy. We'll get into this next story right now, and this next story is pretty funny. It is actually bringing sexy back to the Army. Back in the day, you should not be able to do shit, and soldiers like you were. For instance, and this is no shit. No, there's been a change to the regulation right now, where if you'd wanted to administer some sort of corrective training, you can now implement. And this is no shit. This is no. I'm not BSing on this. This is a real deal. Holyfield. The Army approves push-ups and PT as punishments for minor infractions. Hot breaking news. This is breaking news, right?
So it's official now.
It's official now. We can drop your ass. See, now I'm going to come back in. I'm going to ask. I asked Morgan at the J1 if I could. She gets my request to return to active duty packet, and she denies it all the time because everybody says who, it's who, and then everybody laughs and ha ha ha, and we can't have you come back. But anyways, so just recently the Army we're bringing sexy back. Yeah, we're bringing push-ups back, baby. The Army approves push-ups and PT as punishment for minor infractions. So they recently published an update to its command policy. For those of you that don't know and don't know what the command policy is for Army command policy, it is AR 600-20. So basically, it encourages leaders and sergeants to drop soldiers for push-ups in order extra physical training to correct minor screw-ups as an alternative to stiffer non-judicial punishment. So
Okay, but are they defining what they consider a minor?
ooh, yeah, there you go.
Can you answer that for me?
Can you answer that? Because we got screenshot madness tonight after the guess. So,
oh, really?
Oh yeah, we got some awesome screenshot madness tonight. I think the way I see it it's kind of like one of those. How do I say that? It's one of those it was one of those informal norms of the military tradition that are now back in, or that are actually on paper codified. That's what I'm talking about. Codify that shit.
Was it ever on paper?
It really wasn't. I mean, really, because it's a slippery slope. You know, I always believe that if you were, hey, are you for real? You're late for formation or something like that. And you know, if you were to actually log in the times of your military career, how many times were you late for formation? And if you really went by the regulation, when you were late for formation, everyone could have been court-martialed from Private E1 all the way up to, you know, a multi-star general. It didn't matter. Whenever you were late, you could get docked for whatever. You could get busted. So I was always you could knock them out. If you're coming in late to formation, soldiers used to walk to formation, and they know the rules. They would just walk up and then start doing push-ups, and they would just keep doing it until I finished putting information out. I mean, I was pretty quick, and unless there was something big, but I always made sure that the leaders were good. I never had anybody just do some push-ups. Everybody knew. Hey, Sergeant Rollins doesn't like doing paperwork, man. I'd rather do push-ups and shit like that, and then a stern talking to or an ass chewing sometimes would have led to a couple of teeth grinding, conversations back and forth one way, sometimes both. Depends, because I would always, hear what the other side was. But it was kind of like an unwritten. I don't know if it was never written in the rule. Was it really in the rule? I don't know. We should call the judge up and ask him. So that's kind of weird. Anyways, so last updated in 2014, the 213-page Army regulation is designed to offer command guidance for commanders across the Army, including updates to corrective training, sexual harassment reporting, and extremist activity on social media. Let me say that again. Extremist activity on social media. And it's like what you said. What is the definition of a stiff punishment? What's the definition of? That's a good question, too.
Yeah, because I could see that being opinionated by a NCO or a private being like, hey, this is not minor, this is major, those sidekicks on the sideline, or the privates that tell the sergeant, F you, this is opinionated. So
it's very opinionated, right? So you think it's opinionated when it comes to specific opinions of, showing up late is showing up late, right?
Yeah, that's
that's all. So do I court-martial somebody? And Tina's got a good point. That is a good point, Tina. Everyone's kind of gun-shy with corrective action because it's kind of like on the line of it's hazing.
Or discriminating.
You're hazing. Why would you discriminate? A push-up's a freaking push-up. There is no discrimination on a push-up. Your ass is doing push-ups, right?
Modern times, people come up with stupid shit. It's sexist or discriminating.
For push-ups? You think push-ups are sexist?
I could see someone pulling that card.
Pulling that card.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting method of saying that. Okay.
Yep. I could see it.
Okay. All right.
There's always those young, not dumb, but young, unexperienced in life privates. So I could see it happening.
No, I could see. You're right. I definitely could see that happening. It doesn't. Here's my point. It doesn't make sense at all that everyone wants to argue doing a push. If you're doing correct, the last time I took around the military, I'm just saying there are some things that we're required to do in the military, and if anything else, if it's giving you some gains, who cares? You're learning on the incident. You're knocking out some push-ups, and there you go. You're just not going to be in the military and just not do PT. You're not going to be in the military and just not do military type events. So,
well, speaking of PT and all that, as this came out because of can't really do PT tests, didn't stay in fit because of COVID, to give the sergeants a tool to keep people in shape.
Ooh, that's Dude, that's a conspiracy theory in itself.
It's just the timing and coincidence,
Right.
Or is it because of modern times of all these young kids whining and crying and going to Jag about stuff, and Jag's getting tired of it?
No. That makes sense. That's I can see that. Yeah, I can understand that.
What really pushed it?
I don't know. Probably, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. Hey, the way I see it is that leaders. I'm going to continue with the article. Is leaders across the Army have an obligation to know that hey, you're cutting off, dude. You there? Have an obligation to know, enforce, and take appropriate actions in accordance to with Army Command policy. Sergeant Major of the Army Grissom said. And so regulations include specified authority for non-commissioned officers to correct minor soldier infractions and brief forms of exercise. So a brief form of exercise. The changes empower NCOs to lean on punitive measures as a form of corrective training and minor deficiencies. Sergeant Major Jasmine Johnson, the command Sergeant Major, said in the release. So according to the regulation, physical exercises are an acceptable form for minor acts of indiscipline. For example, requiring a soldier to do push-ups and arriving late to formation, so as long as it did not violate the Army policies on prohibiting, and we just talked about it, hazing and bullying and unlawful punishment. Non-punitive corrective measures can include denial of pass or other privileges or work or training. Regulation wants to warn leaders actually that they should monitor subordinates to make sure that non-punitive practices don't deteriorate into hazing. So with that, when you you think somebody, I'll be honest with you, if somebody could go, yes, D-Max said stress cards can make a comeback. So soon enough, the way some people could do this, I could see somebody going too far with this when it comes to doing push-ups. I could see somebody just going and going and going and then not realizing that they could be really messing up their troop, if that makes any sense. Whoa, you there? Hey, shipwreck, you there? Oh, it sounds like he's going to the bathroom. Anyways, then that's a good question. That stress card is going to come back and people are going to be like flipping out. Or I could just see somebody going off and going too far, making them do more push-ups than they can handle. Anyways, so that's what that one. I don't think that it's a bad thing. I don't. For example, and this is another quote, which is probably going to be, for example, if soldiers appear in proper uniform, they're required to correct it immediately. A lot of it's got to be corrected immediately anyways. I don't see why we have to have a regulation to correct uniform. If you know you're wrong, my biggest thing right now that I've seen is individuals walking around with their tops off. Like when you see somebody getting gas and you don't see them in a full, they think that when they take the top off, they're no longer in uniform. Well, technically they're not, but they're no longer in uniform when they do that. Go ahead, what?
Is there a percentage of the uniform, if I remember correctly, like...
You're supposed to wear it completely. That's why it's called a complete uniform.
Complete uniform, but if you're wearing, like, just the pants and no... I forgot exactly, but...
The top, the uniform blouse. The uniform blouse, you don't think there's something wrong with that?
If you're driving your personal POV, but once you get out of your personal POV, you should correct yourself.
Well, yeah. But again, there is that. There is the. How do I say this? There is. How is the newer generation of soldier taking this when we've not done it a lot? You know what I mean? If we've not done push-ups enough already, then it freaking. It gets to the point where it's a. You did this because I'm a woman. You did this because I'm a man. You know what I mean? Because at what point is, like you were saying before, what push-ups? What's considered a minor infraction?
Right.
So.
Or how far can NCO take the push-ups?
Right. Right. Of course.
10 push-ups, 100, 500.
Well, I mean, I can
2 hours.
I can do some push-ups. I mean, I have been dropped before as a senior leader at one time. I hope it was a joke, but it was you know, somebody was kind of busting balls about it, and then you know, wait, what's going on here?
You had to pay your dues.
I had to pay my dues. WTF Nation Radio, you on the air?
Hi.
Hey.
Are you guys still talking about the corrective action?
Yeah. What's up? What are you? First off, are you in the military or a veteran? What's your status?
I am. I'm active.
Okay, you're active. And what are you, a non-commissioned officer or an officer?
Can I not say?
Okay, so you're a leader then. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
No, there you go. Okay, so you're a leader in the military, and how about we'll just say in the military, so that way we're not really, you know, nailing it down. You could be any leader in the service. How about that?
That works.
Okay. How do you feel about the Army's change of policy? Go ahead.
So, my story is that, you know, Joe, they know that they can use the bullying and hazing and all of this. One experience that I had was soldiers came up, reported, well, we were, you know, given corrective action out on the hot pavement for over an hour. It was over an hour, and I was able to look at the cameras on the time they specified, and they literally did the prep drill. They did the prep drill as corrective action, and then they filed the complaint. So everybody, you know, is nervous to administer that.
So you're basically saying that sometimes leaders will not administer that type of physical correction due to the fact that Joe can be sneaky, and they could say, I'm being hazed, or I'm filing a complaint.
It's just safer to go the paper route.
For real? You think it's safer to go the paper route? Wow. And why do you think? Do you think the paper route is more effective? I mean, because that's kind of. I mean,
I don't think it's more effective. I think it's safer for the leaders.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so for leaders, then, so we got a caller here saying leaders, screw the push-ups, just do paper. That's kind of a.
But I agree with you 1,000%. I think that the actual just old school knocking out some push-ups, get some humility in you, and drive on with, you know, the right way is more effective than, okay, here's my, you know, 15th counseling about whatever the thing is.
Right. See, that's my biggest thing, is that where do we draw the line on when do we start going on paper? Because then how many push-ups is this soldier going to knock out before they finally sink in? There's just some individuals that just shouldn't be in the military, you know what I mean? Or should not be progressed, or should just get, I don't know, their bell rung. I mean, of course, you know, we're speaking, you know, hypothetically, theoretically, and, you know, rhetorically. I'm not really thinking about knocking the crap out of a troop, but I'm just saying, because people now, you know, because now, like I said, I'm a former leader in the military. I could be advocating soldiers getting their bell rungs by some, well, I don't know, WTF Nation Radio said walk around with a hammer, and I did not say that. Just like you just said, Joe's can't be sneaky. They can't say that it was, you know, it was I could be advocating violence, you know, Joe on Joe crime or whatever. But the thing is that do you think it's also a lack of support from the chain of command when you say it's safer to do paperwork?
No, I don't. I just think in general, you know, we're very careful about, you know, because it's a delicate balance, because I think that the younger generation maybe doesn't have the same coping skills that we did growing up. And so, you know, where do we draw the line between pushing them so hard that now they can't face life because they just don't have the coping skills, they just don't possess them, they weren't taught them, and then also shaping them to be productive and happy soldiers. So it's a complicated problem.
No, I like what you said about coping skills. I think it's interesting to hear about soldiers lacking coping skills. A lot of soldiers will say it's I don't know. Think about it. When you joined the military, you expected tough discipline training, right? You'd expected some sort of good order, discipline, military. I don't know, militaristic because you're in the military, militaristic type discipline. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you as a soldier coming in, you would expect some sort of harsh corrective. Like you said, quick, short, to the point. It's over and done with. Lesson learned. Everyone has some humility, and we're good to go. That I think that a lot of it too will rest on the chain of command too. Because if I were doing some push-ups and that comes out, I can just imagine how many complaints. Do you think that complaints will rise now that this policy has changed?
I think it just depends on which, I guess, the point in the soldier's career. I think that early on in the soldier's career, like maybe when they've first entered the military and they're learning to be a soldier, that yes, it's a more delicate balance for like drill sergeants or people like that, because those are civilians and they're not used to being yelled at and told no, and like you can't do that thing that you're doing, or you have to be on time. Hey, how about you shave your face? Like it's just
right. It's like
some of those
adulting type things. I don't like saying adulting, but it's basically it. Basic adulting stuff. All right, cool.
I think that's the area that would be more. There would be more complaints coming from there than the seasoned people that have been in the military for a moment.
Okay, so real quick, I don't know, and you can answer this if you're not. Are you at a let me see. At what echelon are you right now serving? Are you at a unit echelon? Are you at a headquarters echelon? Are you at a command echelon? Where do you work at?
No.
No, you're not going to say. Okay, no, I understand. That's cool. That's cool. Totally got it. Well, appreciate your call. Appreciate your input.
All right. Thanks, you guys, for all you do.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye. Wow. See, there you go. There's one leader's aspect to it. Let's see what we got. I want to wait for the mafia.
Good points.
She does. Let's hear another call right now. See what they got going on. WTF Nation Radio, you're on the air. So what do you think about this push-up stuff?
Hey, what's going on, Ice? So, man, this push-up stuff, I think it's a good change. I think it's going to take a little bit of getting used to by some of the NCOs who are used to only doing paperwork, though.
So you're saying that leaders that are so used to just that were so used to articulating how to do stuff on paper are now going to be like, all right, how do I do physical shit? Is that what you're saying?
I think that people are going to be afraid. I agree with the previous caller.
Wow. Okay.
Like she said that it is safer for the NCO to do paperwork, right? Like, it covers you, and you don't have the possibility of Joe going and saying, Sergeant so-and-so hazed me. But, like, I remember when I was younger doing stupid stuff, and a certain platoon sergeant had us all go find our mines in the sand pit for a little while. And I didn't do that thing again. So, depending on whether or not it's effective, it didn't negatively affect my career. So I'm actually kind of thankful that I had some old school NCOs who may or may not have, done some corrective training that probably wasn't what they should have done, officially, if that makes sense. No, it
totally makes sense. And if anything else, are you, so real quick, are you a I'm going to ask the same questions. Are you in the Army? You can answer yes or no, or you could say I'd rather not say.
I'm in the Army. I'll stop when I feel like I want to stop.
So you want so you're gonna give me some safe words? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pineapples, man.
Pineapple. Okay, so if you you're a leader in the, are you at what level are you? Are you at unit echelon, headquarters echelon, like a brigade echelon, or are you at a big MACOM division or a higher command echelon? Where are you at in the pecking order of?
Neither, my friend. I'm a nobody right now. I'm in a rather special program that I'm not going to elaborate on.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I think I might know what that program is. There are several special programs that you could be involved with. Okay, got it. Okay, so are you with that in that special program? Has that helped you in dealing with some type of leadership dilemmas that individuals would have not probably gotten that type of treatment. How about that?
Absolutely. Honestly, like, I mean, I'm relatively new to the program, you know, so I'm just still kind of getting my feet wet here, but I'm enjoying it. And, you know, it's definitely been I've been able to surprisingly impart some, you know, some small little lessons here and there, but, you know, it's good. It's allowed me to kind of help, you know, kind of help guide some people and temper some, you know, expectation. I don't know. I really have a little ways to go to see if it's going to be, you know, see what's going to go on, but I think it's good. I think it's good stuff.
All right. Okay. Now, were you before in this special program? You obviously you just said you just got into the program. So in your previous, I should say, how about this? So I won't really truly dime you out. In your previous experience prior to enrolling into the special program, you'd say that there were some people that probably could have used some freaking push-ups as opposed to paper because paper didn't work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always made the joke that a lot of the cats I've worked with are all kind of special ed, but you know, like I'll tell. So I had one soldier. You know, I had to kind of work with him a little bit. You know, he learned everything the most difficult way possible. And I honestly thought at one point in time, he was just irredeemable. And I used to have the thing where I would say, you have two options. You have push-ups or paperwork. I was kind of breaking the rules a little bit doing that. But, you know, when I actually looked him up on Facebook a little while later, he's still in the Army. He finally got his stripes. He'd been busted all the way down to private. So, you know.
Okay, that's
it. I think that, you know, if you put too much on paper, it kind of kills the ability for soldiers to really redeem themselves.
So you're saying, because in other words, sometimes having a record on shit is too bad. It's bad to have. I mean that type of count. Okay, all right. I can see.
I would always make a record, but I would put it in my desk drawer.
All right, gotcha.
Right?
No, I understand. But you know what I would usually do is I would use that to everyone understand how come I was able to write these glorious bullets on NCOERs or assist some of my officer. Some of my officer counterparts, or to assist my raiders sometimes in the glorious of all NCOER bullets of excellence. It's because I wrote shit down. I wrote some of the stuff that happened. You know what I mean? So, and then when it came to counseling time, I would use that same information, the little green notebook that everyone likes to talk about. I would sit there for a counseling time and I just write, okay, so and so's having this is this. Sometimes paper just doesn't need to happen. Sometimes a corrective action, like you just said, will help. It doesn't kill somebody. It doesn't crush their career. We're going to get to that in a minute when we
and
just
sometimes sometimes when you make those corrective actions, even if you do have to go the paper route, if the soldier fixes themselves, sometimes paperwork just gets lost, man. Right.
Somebody just made a comment. Counseling statements are about as good as a restraining order. There's no sting to it. You know what I mean? There's no sting to some of the things that counseling's knock out. Doesn't really affect it unless you tell somebody you're not going to the board or something like that, and there's got to be a paper trail on why you cannot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
but at the same time, like if the soldier fixes themselves after a little while, like you don't really want to permanently negatively affect their development.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm of the belief that you can. Okay, didn't work. You can only fuck up so much. If you're,
I know that.
Because it's not. No, this is not a. We need to get away from the. I'm not saying we shouldn't nurture. I'm not saying we shouldn't lead with empathy. But there's also a point of understanding that maybe the service is not just for you. Maybe it's time for you to get out. If you are of somebody that's supposed to be in a position or a rank, and you're fucking up, and you're really fucking up, how many times do I give you the chance of fucking up without your peers and without your subordinates seeing that now I'm messed up on my leadership abilities? You know what I mean? It's kind of like I'm not really. As a leader, I'm looked upon too. You're three types of people as a leader, right? Who you are, who you think you are, and who other people think you are. And if you got that one guy you just want to empathize with, you just want to empathize with somebody. Oh, I want to empathize. I want to make sure he's good to go. Well, goddamn, the guy's been late, fucking, every day for the last 8 months. How much we're gonna give this guy a break? Is he gonna get a break? You know what I mean? So, good discussion, man.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I will be honest that one of my biggest weaknesses as a leader was I was too empathetic. Well, as a leader, I should say, sometimes I can be too empathetic.
Right.
However, I've always been fortunate to have good, I've always been fortunate to have good leaders above me who have pulled me aside at some point and said, hey, like, you might be being too much of a candy ass, so, why don't you, harden up a little bit. And that's happened before. I'll admit that. But that's also, how I've grown as well.
Right. Well, I appreciate it, man. That's good feedback. See, that's okay. I can see that. So, but as long as you, at whatever rank of program you're supposed to be in right now, as long as you, when you finish the program, understand and you take that information, sometimes being a candy ass will get Joe taking advantage of you sometimes. If not, Joe's are...
Absolutely, but,
Joe's
one of the benefits I'm very fortunate with is I have a large swath of mentors I can ask questions of. So, I've always stayed in contact with, previous leaders that I've dealt with. And I have, friends who, I've been around for a little while, so I have friends who have dealt with other situations. What I've found is really helpful for me is when I'm kind of facing an issue that I don't really know the right answer for, or I can't find the right answer myself, I just reach out to my peeps.
Okay.
And it's good to get that feedback.
Yeah, no, that's good. As long as, just like we're talking about PAO people that I reach out to, as long as you're reaching out to somebody that can help you out, then you're good to go. All right, man. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Anytime, brother.
All right, have a good one. Man, so that's a pretty good swath of feedback there when it comes to push-ups and all that, right? I think that's pretty good. Some pretty good feedback. What you think, Shipwreck? Today, Shipwreck. Is your mic on? There we go. I see you fumbling. I see you fumbling, man.
I was trying to pour me another Jack and Coke, man.
Oh, you're drinking Jack and Coke? Oh, man. I could
see what they were saying, that helped morale a little bit better, just doing push-ups versus paperwork, so you don't ruin someone's career.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have a special screenshot madness tonight. There's going to be a special shout out. Our favorite admin, General General Donahoe, commander of the Major General Donahoe, commander of the Fort Benning and the Maneuver Center of Excellence. We have some of his notes are going to be involved in tonight's screenshot madness, and you're going to be like, wow. So it's one of those things where he is not playing, guys, gals. If you're down at Fort Benning, he is not playing. And you got some of those that are going to be, hey, you don't play around, because he's going to freaking. I'm serious. He's going to freaking. I'll show you. I'll provide proof. This is going to be awesome. Everyone's like, oh, it's messed up. This is some of this. I've got feedback. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's wrong. I think this is this. I think this is that. So we're going to have a heated conversation on Screenshot Madness tonight. After our guest, of course. Can't wait. That's going to be awesome.
We're having a double hitter, too.
Oh, it's going to be, because we got a guest and we got Screenshot Madness. There's been some conversations going back and forth about talking to WTF Nation, how the WTF Nation is now integrated into the Army somehow, some way, doing in discussions. We are now invited to a lot of the forums and discussions we have. We have Morgan the J1. We have the WTF Sergeant Major. We have a Sergeant Major, one of the several Sergeant Majors. And it's just the dialogue that we're now involved with the Army. It's something that we would never have dreamed about. I don't know, just since 2012, 2013. It's insane. It's kind of like, whoa, okay. There were some questions about how some things are being put out. Like, for instance, right now, we got a few minutes to talk about this. There's an infamous TikTok video that's out there. Have you seen this? Of two female soldiers dancing, wap, wop. What am I saying? Am I saying it wrong? It's Whiskey Alpha Papa. It's a Cardi B song. And everyone's dancing to that. All these girls are dancing to that. And everyone's like just making some mad drama about it. About these two female service members dancing in uniform. Well, not really in uniform because they don't have tops on. So they have their t-shirts on, but they have removed their uniform blouses. to do this video. So to me, they weren't really, if you want to talk that way and be specific and be technical about it, they technically weren't in uniform. They were just wearing t-shirts, a t-shirt and fatigue pants and boots. How about that?
That they got from Salvation Army.
Well, again, facts being that they are, everyone's just like destroying these two female soldiers and their soldiers on about this TikTok video. Have you not seen dudes? I noticed everything got quiet too when we were talking about dick pics and stuff. When we were talking about, we're going to be posting conversations, we're going to be posting stuff like that, and I have the inbox is open, ready to go, to drop mad receipts and dimes on individuals. They do this to women all the time. The same guys that are saying these women are doing this shit and this bullshit. There's even female leaders that are saying that too. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. And then there's dudes doing it. Sometimes worse. I mean, TikTok is an abomination anyways, and it's a Chinese collection asset tool. So I'm just gonna say that. Yeah, it's hey, use it for what you want and forewarn. That's how they collect data on you. That's gonna be another topic. It's another conversation too. But so these two female soldiers are getting shamed on the webs about dancing WAP. When we have videos and pictures, World War II images. You see the World War II images of those two guys, and one guy straddled himself over a cannon like that's supposed to be like that's a giant dick or something like that. You ever seen that? You see that World War II, or it's a rocket or something like that. That has happened throughout time. Doing stuff like that, and soldiers, goofing off, doing little dance videos and stuff like that. Shut up, boomer. You know what I mean? They're kids doing stuff.
It's to help out their morale.
Right. So, my mama said TikTok is the devil. How are inner city stations supposed to get their numbers for the month and then keep them contracts coming, ladies? Ooh, damn. That's harsh. I wouldn't even say, But anyways. What else? What else are we going to hit? So, you got anything else?
No, I think you covered everything. What we're going to be doing after we have these wonderful guests coming on.
Right, exactly. We're going to go ahead and take a break. And then, they should be calling in about 4 or 5 minutes. And we'll see. We'll see what's up. So, I can't wait. I'm already going through my notes right now, looking at some stuff. Because I can't wait to talk about this topic. But we'll be right back. Everyone take a break, recharge your glasses, and then shots.
WTF Nation Radio. WTF Nation Radio.
Take it from me, Ice. You can't just float around space not caring about stuff forever.
The voice of U.S. Army. WTF Moments. This is WTF Nation Radio.
Shit in the bag, Pogue.
Nothing feels the same. Let it all be so bad? Is this where you draw the line? 'Cause it's so sad. Tell me where you lost your faith. Is it so bad? Couldn't see it in your face. And it's so sad. I'll wait until you come back. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come down. Come back down. While you keep it in your head. Is it so bad? Never heard a word you say it. And it's so sad. Tell me when you lost your way. 'Cause it's so bad. I'll see you when I pray. And it's so sad. I'll wait until you come back. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come down. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come back. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come down. Come back down. Is it what you want? Is it what you need now? Is it what you breathe? Is it what you're bleeding now? Is it what you feel? Is it what you're feeling now? Is it what you wanted? I'll wait until you come back. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come down. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come back. Come back down to me. I'll wait until you come down. Come back down. Hello, hello, you. Will you come back down to me? Hello, hello, you. Will you come back down? Hello, hello, you. Won't you come back down to me? Hello, hello, I'm always in the clouds, looking up and fading out. Cirrus shapes I found blow me away. Van Allen right around, pushing through. Skin is brown. Nature has us trapped in fear, so I get lost in sound. I wonder if you'll ever know why I am the way I am. I've been thinking a lot about time and space surrounding. Is there anyone who is thinking
I am here determined to stop this future atrocity.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
The voice of U.S. Army, WTF Moments. This is WTF Nation Radio.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Everything stated on WTF Nation Radio is to be considered the opinion of the person that stated it, and not an official representation of WTF Nation Radio or U.S. Army WTF Moments.
Price does not include tax, title, or license. Some assembly required. Each item sold separately. Batteries not included. Objects in mirror are closer than they appear. If conditions persist, contact a physician. Individual results may vary. Keep out of the reach of children. Avoid prolonged exposure to direct sunlight. Keep in a cool, dark place. And
please enjoy the show. Shots.
And we're back. Part 2 of Sergeant's Time with our guests, Peter Singer, August Cole, authors of Ghost Fleet and Burn-In. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks so much for having us.
Oh,
thanks for having us on.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, first off, I mean, tell us a little about yourself. You guys can jump in however you want to do it, and then we'll get into the books and we'll get into stuff, other AI related stuff. So go ahead, whoever wants to jump in.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
We're in totally different locations, so it's hard for us to coordinate like that. Can't even see each other.
Oh, too easy.
Yeah. This is Peter Singer. I grew up in North Carolina, now live outside D.C., have written a number of books, both fiction and nonfiction, essentially looking at changes in warfare and technology, and just really excited to be joining you here. And I'll turn it over to my partner in crime, August. And one of the great things is we have, through our work, actually become even better friends, which is apparently a rarity in this space.
Awesome. You're right. It is.
There's that adage in like corporate hiring, it's like something like, could you see yourself going on a 8-week camping trip with the person? And if so, then they're a good fit. Well, if you can write 2 books with them over 5 years, 6 years, then perhaps, you've got what it takes to make a good partnership. So this is August speaking, August Cole, and I'm based in the Boston area. I've grown up in the Pacific Northwest and moved all over the country, living in the Bay Area during the 90s, the tech boom, and then between DC and Chicago and a couple other places. And my focus really, in addition to the work that I do with Pete on these novels, is trying to use narrative, what I've been calling fic-int, or a form of useful fiction, to really understand the future of conflict. And I've been lately very focused on artificial intelligence, the machine learning, transformation, and not just the kinetic side of warfare, but of course, the digital, impact that it's going to have. And so I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to you about all that and the work that we've been doing.
Okay, so what got you? I'll ask this for Peter, and then we'll just hit it back and forth. So, Peter, what got you interested in this? You've been called a futurist, and I don't know. People have kind of like thrown some shade on it and not thrown some. And I kind of agree with the term that you are a futurist. You're basically, I don't know, just like a strategist would be, but on a more cyber term. Is that correct?
I think the challenge is the word futurist sometimes is used kind of hucksterish, right? It's so often linked to something that someone's trying to sell. Look, I actually have a formal job title as strategist at an organization called New America.
Okay.
I don't have a formal title as futurist, but anyway, I mean, if you pull back on, you think about it, whatever job you're in, you have to wrestle with the future. I mean, if you work in training, budgeting, planning, you're a coach of a sports team,
right?
You've got to wrestle with that. So, what got me into this in terms of the book project or the overall work?
Just the overall work on AI and understanding, basically your interpretation. What got you hooked to this? Just like how I got hooked to influence and psychological operations and using social media as weaponry, basically. How did you get into this?
When I think about the topics that I've chosen for books, and this, whether they're nonfiction or this new kind of fusion of fiction and nonfiction that August and I have done, I've always been drawn to topics that sort of have a cross between it's emergent, it's new, but it's also not well understood. And finally, it's incredibly important. And so you have sort of this cross of it. So, the very first book that I did was actually a book looking at originally it was a dissertation for college looking at the rise of private military contractors. So you had the cross between this new industry And yet people back then weren't paying attention to it. This was pre-Iraq War, actually even before companies like Blackwater existed. And yet I was pointing out this is a really new and important thing, and it's only going to grow in significance, and it's going to create these kind of challenges. So that's what I've been drawn to, or another book looking at cybersecurity. In AI, so what Burn-In, it's, as I mentioned, it's a new kind of book. It's a cross between nonfiction and fiction. So it's a novel smashed up with narrative. The underlying topic of it is essentially the subtitle explains the novel of the real robotics revolution. And so what we have is this incredibly important change going on around us. A lot of different ways we can talk about it being important, but let's use numbers. 91% of leaders say AI is the most important game-changing technology out there, 91%. And you can see that it's been woven into everything from the new U.S. national defense strategy to it's the core of China's 2030 strategy to pretty much every single major corporation out there, be it Google, Facebook, Baidu, McDonald's, John Deere. They've all investing billions of dollars in AI. So you got this huge significance, and yet only 17% of leaders say they even grok a little bit of it. They even their self-report that they even understand a mild part of it. And of course, that's just a massive disconnect. So that's kind of a numeric way of thinking about it. Pull back the storytelling side. We're seeing the things from science fiction come true, and yet they're not playing out like science fiction warned us. So it's not the robots are coming to kill us. It's this massive robotics revolution around us. So That's why we were drawn to this topic. It's important, maybe the most important thing in terms of technology and the impact on our world around us and the way it hits everything from war, business, the way you parent, but it's also not well understood. And then finally, it's got these sci-fi elements that you could play with.
What about you, August? What was your attraction to the topic of AI and this type of topics?
For a long time, I've been working in the field of essentially storytelling. I began my life professionally as a journalist, both as a photographer when I was trying to kind of get my way, in the door, and then as someone involved in the financial news sector, covering, the kind of .com boom and seeing how technology was transforming not only the very business I was in, but also the entire country, and doing that really from the cradle of that, during the first boom in San Francisco. You fast forward to, 10 years later, and I was at the Wall Street Journal and Washington, D.C., covering the way that the defense industry was evolving and that technology was clearly like changing the world. Hacking was becoming an increasing threat. Our biggest weapon systems were vulnerable, yet the status quo and the consensus wasn't facing up to that. When I left that journalism world behind, it gave me a chance to kind of reset and really go back to some of the science fiction and kind of the concepts and ideas I've been reading about my whole life. But I felt like when I had this serious career in journalism that I couldn't really pay attention to it. And yet when I kind of rebooted everything and started to really go at the ideas that interested me most, it often had to do with what was going to happen, not what just happened. And, that should be obvious to someone who worked in journalism for a long time, but it really, I think, was a kind of a profound moment for me to figure out, well, how do we talk about what's going to happen next? And then it was about trying to figure out what are the ideas and things that people either don't understand or don't want to talk about. So Ghost Fleet, allowed us to create a conversation around China's military, strategic and economic rise at a time when that really wasn't a front burner issue, which seems strange in 2020, but back in 2013, this wasn't, 2014, this was not really what people wanted to be talking about in DC. When you looked at the emergence of AI and the disruptive power that it potentially has in Western societies, you look at robotics in the everyday sense, there are these little threads you can pull all around you, but really kind of creating a cohesive narrative around it is difficult. And what I found is that the deeper I got into that world, and that's been in really different facets, I've worked in support of the Defense Innovation Board's AI Ethics Task Force. I've worked with the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. I consult for an AI company. The deeper I get into those worlds, I actually find space for someone like me who was a history major, right? I'm not a technologically, trained individual. And yet, both narrative is important, but so is, I think, an appreciation of the ultimate, human experience in the world that we're not only in today, but the one that we'll be living in the future. So a book like Burn-In really takes that to its fullest extension and kind of expressing what it might be like to live in a world that is fundamentally transformed, as Pete said, by AI. And just as there are, I think, really big questions in a very practical sense about if you're running a major multinational, if you're a service chief in the military, how are you going to see your organizations fundamentally altered by technologies that make decisions essentially decrease in their cycle time, that create global scalability in terms of software-driven capabilities or effects. Even the whole paradigm of like a platform-based military, big fighters, big ships, big subs, that's all being upended. And software-driven warfare is, of course, the paradigm we're really in, whether we realize it or not. And of course, that envelope, that bubble of what conflict and war looks like too is changing. It's not only expanding, but it's kind of like lumpy. And so my fascination, I hope you can hear, is with these really interesting gray areas, these really difficult questions that people aren't quite ready to confront. And my hope is that the work that I do aids them in that, and that it's useful in that kind of purest sense.
Do you think it's because it's one of those? Well, I mean, it is. Sometimes I think it is budget and funding and the food fights between the services on who's going to handle the authorities. Do you think it's a legality issue that nobody just wants to have to muddle through? And neither of you can answer this. So do you think nobody just wants to deal with this because it's just a pain in the ass to get to even get to the employment portion of it, as alone the AI laws? Because there's a discussion about AI laws. I mean, I know I'm throwing 1,000 questions at you, but do you feel that now, hey, maybe AI laws need to be involved in this? Finally?
I'll take a crack at that question about, kind of transformation. And to some extent, like around the elevation of the idea of innovation. Across the board, right? It's not just, big government organizations that are wrestling with that, but you have, big corporations to medium-sized ones. I think transformation, in many cases, when it comes to technology, is often a cultural issue. It's like a human question.
Right.
And, being able to decouple people's expectations and habits, whether that is, fiscal or budgetary, traditions or just even kind of concepts that we get wed to, until you can really start to kind of crack that almost like calcified relationship with the organizations that we've built, in the national security world. These were ones that have, been assembled to essentially prevail in the Cold War, reoriented to for the long war of the last 20 years. And now we're kind of at this great power inflection point where there's another kind of like shifting of sorts. And whether there's a legislative or a policy initiative that, or a set of them that can ultimately, put the Pentagon on the best footing for let's say a conflict with China where AI is a determinant technology. Some of that is necessary, to have that like top down, but ultimately you're talking about like bottom up. I really believe that a lot of the openness to the kind of transformation that technologies like AI can unleash, that is something that has to be as much a question of organizational priorities at like a cultural level as it is a kind of mandate from the most senior officers and military leaders. The Marine Corps is going through a really interesting period where they're trying to kind of recalibrate, really restructure, and trying to figure out, well, what can we do to become like a lighter, more maritime raiding force? Do we get rid of tanks? Do we get rid of heavy fighters, et cetera? That is the kind of fundamental restructuring that I think is very suited to this era, where software can change concepts of lethality and effects. Really rewire in many ways the calculations that we make about the idea of mass or not. Does that have value? What is precision's value, et cetera? Those are all things that are certainly in play right now, and that having a kind of an open mind about what we will need to be in a position to prevail, both like tactically but also strategically, that's really critical. And I think for me that seeing signs that that's happening out there is really important. At that, like, at the Marine Corps service level, for example, just use one, as it is to know that we have, offices in the DoD that are focused on, investing in AI. But, you said earlier, food fights and budgets, like until there's money, appropriated or, authorized really for these kinds of initiatives, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And that's something I've learned, in my old life as a journalist and just, having spent a lot of time around these issues that like, the budgets will really determine what the priorities can be. And that's not something where we, I think, stack up well against, a peer competitor like China.
It's interesting when I do these talks for various military audiences about the different changes that are happening. One of the pictures that I'll show hits another element of this. It's a picture of the USS Arizona in 1939. And I use this to
But the
show
future of war is also
on the
going to
back
be-
of the Arizona, the battleship, are some float planes. And so when you think about, dealing with change, there's usually sort of the first wave of it where they, people fight change completely. So, back then it was the first, the battleship captain saying, no, planes don't matter. No. And then you get the next wave of it. And that's where I feel we are in a number of these areas where it's people saying, no, don't you tell me that I don't get it. I'm dealing with change. I'm giving up valuable deck space on my battleship for these float planes. I'm giving up budget for these float planes, and they're going to make my battleship more lethal than it's ever been before. And they're right? The airplane's going to be able to fly ahead and scout for it and sight where the cannon fall. But they're wrong, and that they're missing this larger change going on. And so when I look at a lot of the things that are playing out, and we can break them down into different services, you have just enough change not to change, right?
Right.
And that to me is going to be one of our major questions moving forward. So if we think about, what are the historic parallels for where we're at? Is it, just a slight changes are going around us right now, or is this more like 1914? And hey, there's this thing called a flying machine, and it can fly ahead and lets you see what's on the other side of the battlefield. It may even battle against others up there. Or is it akin to 1941? Actually, maybe the battleship doesn't do all that well against airplanes. Or if you're thinking on ground war, it's 1940. It's the combination of armored vehicles and wireless communication and air power. I mean, I'm throwing out these kind of military examples, history examples, because I do think we see that it's not the pure repetition, but the rhyme, is who was it? Twain would say it.
Right. The biggest thing is that, have we had our digital Pearl Harbor yet?
No, but we have in Ghost Fleet, which is the great thing of this combination of fiction and nonfiction, is that you can hopefully play out the nightmare scenario so that it never has to happen in reality. So to go back to what you said about futurist, one of the things that August and I talk about is that we are not solely in the game of prediction. We also like to be in the game of prevention. We're happy when things in our books don't come true, right? And there are things, for example, in Ghost Fleet that won't come true, literally because of military political leaders read it and then said, "Whoa, I don't like that. What can we do to keep this from happening?"
Right. Now, did it? Is it a, how do I say this? Is it an issue with that there are just some individuals that don't get it? Like, we need to advance our education as far as that type of warfare to begin with in all the services?
I think it's a little, I'll jump on that, August. It's a little more complicated than that. When you think about, what fights against change, particularly in large bureaucracies, but also in particular institutions like the military, there's all sorts of things going on. The old is inherently privileged in any kind of bureaucratic battle. The old has an existing program office with existing people working for it who want that program to do well. The old in turn has it usually has factories that are making that current system, employing people in congressional districts, and think about everything that comes out of that, as opposed to the potential of whatever the new is. The old, depending on the service, sometimes has in the specific system, the old sometimes has a tribe around it, right? Some kind of military cultural tribe. I for example, remember someone who was he was an Air Force pilot, had flown first MQ-1 Predator, then MQ-9 Reaper, multiple years at Creech Air Force Base, and yet he would still introduce himself as an F-16 Viper pilot. That's that's a tribe culture issue, right?
Right.
But then there's other things going on. The old is sometimes privileged, and this goes to the studies of what's called like the innovator's dilemma, where guess what? The first generation of whatever the new thing is actually usually going to be worse than the old.
Correct.
It's, the 1.0s actually not all that it's going to be. And so it'll get judged that way. Another aspect of it is the idea that militaries are conservative organizations, small c conservative, for very good reasons. They're going into spaces where, it's the stakes are incredibly high. So they naturally want to go into that space with something that's proven. And so there's a great example, we'd love to jump back in history of this, where the head of Army Horse Cavalry in between World War I and World War II, basically he says, not one more horse will I go up for a tank. And he goes on to talk about how, look, horses have literally 5,000 years of proven combat history. Tanks, they've got, just about a year of not so great combat history. Which you're going to go to war, which you're going to trust. So he was right. Historically, he was wrong on where things were headed. So again, there's all these different things that are at play, and each of them is understandable. It's just you sometimes get these break points in history where things have changed. And now the problem is, I want to be clear here too. Not every technology is a game changer. And so you often get an oversell of that. And that's something that August and I have played with as well. And, both Ghost Fleet and Burn-In is, you may have, Moore's Law in action where you get this ever advancing technology, but Murphy's Law is still there. Or a different way of thinking about it is Clausewitz.
Clausewitz, yeah. Clausewitz, Murphy.
Side,
yep.
Yeah. The other side gets a vote. You still have fog. You still have friction. And so that's one of the things that we're very, it's funny, people try and pigeonhole us as either being pro or anti-tech, depending on how they're reading. We're like, no, we're trying to be realists here.
I think too, there's this element, that Pete's speaking to, that I think relates to how we relate to a technology, but also the effects that it has, not just on our own, vision of what, the future is supposed to look like, but like the organizations that are in today. Information warfare, I think, is a great example in that, AI is going to have and is having fundamental transformations in how, populations are being influenced by their own governments, by private entities, non-state actors, et cetera. And so, that is not a tomorrow, dynamic, right? That's a today dynamic. So what are like the restructuring and elements that can be accommodated, within, fairly even, fast moving bureaucracies to essentially prepare for an adversary that may then take a next step, which is to do something that doesn't fit the prior playbook. Imagining kind of the Crimean model of the little green men that, Russia has effectively utilized in that, Black Sea region. For example, that does not necessarily mean that even if we prepare for little green men in the Baltics, that an adversary is going to be able or even interested in, employing the same strategy and therefore tactics again. And yet, so you can have a whole entity that, transforms to be ready for one approach of, let's say, a new type of warfare, as it might be called, or something like that, and yet not realize that, the evolution is still going to move faster. So I don't know that any one innovation initiative, is going to ensure, relevance into the future, no matter what your organization, but being in a mindset where you're constantly looking at that as a possibility, which is irrelevance, I think is what is going to make, large, especially Western militaries more adaptable to an operational environment that is quite unpredictable when you start to see the kind of machine speed transformations that, again, effective information warfare can have on their own populations, and even the very basic kind of mechanisms to bring a democratic society to war footing. Army Cyber Institute's been doing some cool graphic novels around this, and I think one of the latest efforts that Pete and I were involved in that a little bit, but seeing how they approach that was, I'm just pulling it on my desk right here. It's a really, I think, excellent way to kind of explain the wicked problem that we faced, and so that whole framework being given a kind of tangible manifestation like that in a graphic novel like Invisible Force, that's an awesome step.
It is.
That notion too, that like when you do something creative, that it has benefit beyond the the act itself, whether it's writing a short story or participating in a kind of creative project like that. If you think about like how our kind of nervous systems and our own kind of neuroplasticity, right? Like we can change like how we think and how we therefore act. And so to me, being engaged in those kind of activities and seeing how my own approach to these questions has changed a lot, I think speaks to the potential to do that at kind of at scale. And that's really intriguing and really interesting in terms of like trying to create advantage.
Just to get the audience up to speed, the little green men topic, or the phrase of it was used by mass soldiers of the Russian Federation during the Ukrainian crisis in 2014. There is that aspect of it to where people thought that it was a conspiracy theory until you started seeing the videos on Twitter and YouTube of them. That you could totally tell that they were Russian. You could totally tell that they were part of the Federation. Do you think that is playing even more now? I mean, it's an obvious question. Yeah, it's an obvious yes to me, but do you think now, with the way the stakes are with the current political and social climate in our country, that's going to be played even more? The little green man aspect.
Oh, I mean, people have made the comment that the shooter in Kenosha was a little green man.
Pete, that's a wow. I'm not saying that's an outrageous comment, but you're right. That's
sorry, it was factually correct.
Right.
Look, okay, so let's pull back on it.
Go for it.
The little green men phenomena in Ukraine had all sorts of elements of it. You had, of course, it was a use of proxies to sort of play the is not is.
Right.
They were both deployed troops, but then simultaneously claimed to be, local Ukrainians.
Yep.
As you mentioned, when you're saying it was evident that they were Russians, you could also, they were utilizing social media and messaging of how they were there to protect the Ukrainian, to protect local citizens.
Yep.
And there was even, images of them holding kitty cats.
Yep.
And all this, sort of stuff. But then simultaneous, you could pull up images that would show, hey, this guy at his Spetsnaz graduation ceremony or whatnot. So we explored this in a book called Like War that looked at sort of the weaponization side of social media.
Go for it. You guys are playing right into it. You guys are playing right into this, what we're talking about on Like War. Go ahead.
To your question, I mean, we're seeing all of those elements play out in a domestic political setting too, right?
Right.
The is not is, the multiple different interpretations, the provocateurs, showing up at, trying to create viral moments, including sometimes going into an opposing protest, trying to appear as someone from it. So it was an example of that. There was a guy in the umbrella helmet man in the Minneapolis riots, sort of famously went, smashing window from window, and then turned out he was a neo-Nazi who was sort of trying to appear that there was violence in a place. And so we can go on and on in this.
No, of course, go for it.
But the point of this is that, yes, we've seen social media. It's not just a communication space. It's a new kind of battle space. And all the same phenomena that you might have seen in the Ukrainian conflict, you saw in the Syrian civil war. We've seen the very same tactics play out in domestic political settings, because guess what? The battle space is the same.
Right, it is. You're right. You know, there was some memery about
the little green men thing. I mean, this was a young man who we would have, if it was a different political ideology, we would have described how he was radicalized online.
Right.
He illegally gained a weapon. He joined a group that organized online that talked openly about committing acts of violence, all the way up to shoot to kill before they deployed. Among the members of it, people with various hate symbols, and much like we saw everywhere, unfortunately, in incidents from El Paso to Charleston. I mean, the list goes on and on. Poway, he's in line with unfortunately a sickness that's played out in the U.S. Yeah.
Is it?
You can hear my voice as you and I are talking.
Yeah.
This is playing, and I'm deeply, deeply concerned about this.
Yeah. Oh, I could tell. You got passion behind it, man. I totally hear you. August. So do you think the little green men aspect of this, as Pete just said, is playing as well?
Yeah, the blending of narratives, it comes from, of course, the online presence and manipulation of information, both in the manual, like, I upload something, but also, of course, the algorithmic, what the machine does with it. And I don't think that social media platforms would be as effective at radicalizing people were it not for the way that they are being gamed by people who are trying to, spread messages, especially those that are oriented towards division.
Right.
If you think also about the business model too, and this is a little bit of my business journalist background, but you're trying to get eyeballs, right? You're trying to get attention, and you're trying to get clicks when you're running one of these platforms. And so you're very much playing like at that really gooey neurological center that we all have, and trying to tap into some very base instincts, fear, anger, etc. And that is something that I worry in the similar vein to Pete's concerns, that we're seeing not just young people, but generations of up and down the age spectrum who are being rewired quite literally to kind of have dopamine reward for accessing information that is essentially either tripping fight or flight, or creating anger. And so why does that matter? Like, why is that not just me being upset about like modernity? Well, the exploitation from an adversary point of view, especially at the great power level, is the potential is extraordinary to be able to influence an entire population or an entire alliance. I've been doing some work in this domain right now that I'm really interested in, because we are getting to the point where you have a basket of technologies, many of them that are commercially derived, not even defense proprietary systems, that allow you, with the right understanding of how neural nets and machine learning work, with the right understanding of how just some of the traditional sectors like advertising have optimized information and communication, and plus the new rules of the road, right? Like to the kind of seam between the virtual and the real, where violence can, of course, therefore be used to increase the algorithmic effectiveness, right? There's sort of a perverse incentive that goes with that, and that matters, very much right now, especially if we are to really take seriously, the national kind of security strategy, or the idea that we are in a great power conflict moment potentially, because we are operating in potentially a very weakened position if we allow this kind of disinformation, if we allow this kind of radicalization, if we allow this kind of division to be perpetuated within the American system. Brennan pretty squarely deals with that. We don't overlay a giant, kind of China on it, but it is very much the sort of themes that if you were trying to enfeeble America, to not necessarily do so in a kind of conventional military way, you'd be hard pressed to come up with a better trajectory than the one we're on, to be able to kind of do what you want for the next 10 years if you're China, and then the 10 years after that. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is like the next 5 to 10 years feel very critical. The next 10 after that will be even more so, and then it's like the next what does that put us at 2040? So the next 60, maybe decided, right? So if we really are playing for the entire 20th century in the next 10 to 20 years, not just in the Asia Pacific context, but in America's role in the world, then I think it is incumbent on us as people who care about the future of the country to really try to understand what's going on and spend some time trying to think about what can we do to help make the country more stable, more resilient, importantly. That's not, I think a very controversial concept. It's one that I think we've moved too far away from, though, in thinking about like what our role is, as citizens, but also what it is to mean to be in the world in a sense where we have hit an inflection point we can't take for granted that we'll still be able to kind of have a vote in terms of how the next, part of the century evolves.
I've seen several posts on social media that I've had on air, during this podcast live to tell individuals, you need to shut your freaking hole about some of the stuff that you're passing because you are trying to correlate today's events with past incidents from 2016, 2014, even 2012 to try to add to the fire. Like, it's almost like someone actually quoted one of your books, said that the internet brings out the worst and the best in us, and we are seeing that right now, where that, like you said, the clickbait, dopamine, instant gratification from the more senior generations, from what I'm seeing, is shocking. Mm-hmm. Where you're having somebody that the seal Murphy's monument was destroyed, and see what Antifa did. And I'm thinking, guys, look back. This was destroyed by a vandal in Victorville, California. It's like 4 or 5 years ago. It has nothing to do with this current stuff right here. So don't get mixed in with this. This isn't a protest. This is not a protest. Or this, my acceptance of what you're doing or what you're fighting for ends because you did this. And like you were saying, it's a dangerous path. It's a slope, really, what I'm seeing, that has the same, I would say, the same buildup as burn-in. Almost, I mean,
the joke is that Facebook did to the boomers what they said video games would do to us.
Oh my God, that is you ain't lying. When you think about back in the day when they had the parental advisory stickers put on all these musicians because Twisted Sister and all these other guys are singing. You're right. It's the boomers that are actually inflaming a lot of this stuff, which of course.
No, but sorry, I'll be more. Let's again put data on it.
Of course.
Statistically, boomers are 7 times more likely to spread mis or disinformation online than any other generation.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right.
That's literally there's data on that. Sorry, we can go to book. We can't provide you with the footnote to the Oxford University study right now because someone would be like, well, you're just making that up. But that's it's a challenge. But let's jump off and let's get to okay, what can we do about it?
Right, exactly.
One of the I think core questions for the United States. I really love the comments that August made, about how this is just a pivotal period for us in a lot of different ways. But one of the core challenges for the U.S. moving forward is, and we can see this in everything from how we dealt with coronavirus to how we deal with disinformation, is we need to do a better job of learning from other nations' experiences. Other nations have faced similar problems, and sometimes they've not done it well, and other times they have done it well. And yet we move forward without learning from that. So if we think about, for example, these challenges of mis and disinformation, Estonia, for example, is a democracy that has dealt with your question of the little green men, has dealt with, if anyone knows the threat of Soviet tanks running over you, they live that. And yet they've reprioritized everything from their intelligence community collection to military organization to what they teach their kids in their schools about digital literacy that's equipped them to deal with these threats so much better. And so they've not compromised, their democracy. No one's, said, oh, create censorship or none. They've basically figured out how to build societal resilience to some of these ills. So we can mine from that. Canada's altered things. The Israelis have done certain things. We can pull lessons from other nations about what they've done well and bring them over here. And so, that's in burn-in what we've tried to do. It's it's a mix of novel and nonfiction, and we're playing out some of these trends, but that doesn't mean that they actually, the dark side of them doesn't mean that they actually have to come true.
Right. It's almost like I mean, when I'm reading Burn In, and a lot. What's funny is that the line of work that I used to do, because I'm retired now, but I still kind of do it now. The line of work that I used to do, what's going on in the current climate, reading Burn In, reading all the events of veterans in camps, reading about the pandemic, reading about foreign actors, reading about who the terrorist is, and I'm thinking, someone said in the comics, do you guys write for The Simpsons? Because it's almost it is almost in that literal sense. You guys are almost predicting it, and it's a template. I mean, I know you guys are also mad scientists from in the Army Training and Doctrine Command, and I find it incredible that with all of this that's out there, a lot of this information that's out there, we're not grabbing that, and like you just said, we can make a change. We could change this. I really don't get it, because the coronavirus has exposed, and I'll use your term again, the worst and the best of us on everything now. When it comes to now, nobody knows, and like you said, I think I was listening to one of your podcasts. Now the point of trust. Now, who do we trust now? You know what I mean?
After COVID, we can't hide from ourselves anymore. Right. There's no more pretending.
No.
And I think that is an opportunity on one level where, there is a mindset, which is to say that we have a lot of work to do as a country. And again, our Western allies have some of the same challenges and problems they need to work through too. And if we don't, I don't think we really talk about the consequences of that. Burn In kind of, I think, addresses one of them. Arguably Ghost Fleet does another. But I don't think we often explore really it's like thinking the unthinkable. And, that's often hard to do. And so one of the tools that, Pete and I have found useful to do that is of course, fiction. And, we've seen that applied in more kind of official context, right? Like using short stories to talk about stuff that we don't want to happen, so let's avoid it. But generally, that's not something that people are rewarded for, like at work, which is like, let's talk about all the bad stuff that might happen, because of course it might not, which is one issue. But secondly, that mindset, I think, that is often unwilling to assume that the future will be that different than today, because we've tried really hard to make it, a better future on our terms, or the future that we want. Of course, the world does not work like that. And so I think that's part of that resistance to doing this, because of course, Pete and I work in the open source world. Like we don't even know half of, I suppose, what's really, out there to some extent in some of these technological capabilities, et cetera. And yet from the open source world, you can, put together a fairly cohesive argument for some of these big kind of meta theme ideas that have, very kind of character driven story, telling kind of narratives that I think really drive home, why this is a really like urgent, house on fire kind of moment.
Right.
Then I'd like to think that there are people who can tackle this, but that's often not the case, because you get in captive from like organizational kind of preferences and the dynamics that kind of choke off innovation, and not just in the kind of theatrical or the theater of innovation sense, but in the true, disruptive sense. Because, just being disrupted is not fun. Disruption is hard. And I think that's to some extent some of what, it would take to be able to tackle some of these big challenges.
Do you think, now we're talking about this real quick, I was speaking to somebody about virtual learning. I think are we as not as technically adept to operate some of the technology as we thought we were, just by what's going on with virtual learning and home school now with using Zoom and using other types of platforms?
I think what's interesting, and you hit this in terms of talking about things from the book that have come true. Part of what's played out is that the pandemic accelerated all of these trends that were already in action, and some of them even took them well past what people had imagined. So they were there beforehand, but some they jumped them ahead. So take, for example, telemedicine. The field of telemedicine and its internal projections thought it would be roughly 10 years to what it took about a month in terms of the pandemic to jump ahead and use. or, August and I, like many of the listeners, have kids. So you're hitting this example of distance learning. That was an industry. That industry never expected that it would get to this level of use. Or if you think about, there's various robotic systems that, are in the book. The opening scene of Burn-In has, two characters are talking out in front of Union Station, to the train station in DC, and to make it feel like a future moment, a wheeled delivery robot drives by on the sidewalk. Yeah. That's our future set scene. Right. Guess what? That was deployed, that real world version of it, to delivery groceries, Bay Area, then DC, DuPont Circle area, to now Ann Arbor, proliferating outward, right? Or you in another scene, there's a delivery drone flies overhead. Well, guess what? We've seen delivery drones used to deliver coronavirus testing in North Carolina, to, of course, 7-Eleven played with it to deliver Slurpees to someone's home. Right. Or you pull back and you go, okay, what about, AI surveillance of the individual or society?
Google Glasses. When the Google Glasses with AR, with the AR system that you guys describe in the book,
in that, you talked about Google Glass. In Apple announced a partnership. What was it with? Was it Apple with Warby Parker? Or was it Google with Warby Parker? One of them did it with the designer eyeglasses. Don't think of this as like goes back to our prior discussion. Don't think of this as like the clunky first generation.
Right.
At Apple, for example, and augmented reality, Apple's overall spending in terms of kind of what they're researching and developing next. Their number one spend is on the iPhone division. The number two is augmented reality glasses, which kind of shows you where Apple's looking towards next.
In some of my previous work, when I was in, we did a lot of stuff with Corning, with Google Glasses, with Gorilla Glass, with the transparent displays, which in Burn-In there is some of that as well, with the Flex Vision. What are they? I can't remember the screen. It was a flexible screen. It was fascinating to see that play out, and just like you said, then we go to veterans in camps. Like, it went from use of AI and use of technology to it got dirty real quick, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, so we talked about how you may have Moore's law, but Clausewitz is still there. There's also so William Gibson is an amazing sci-fi writer, and he talked about how the future's already here, just unevenly distributed. And so, on one hand, we show that. So, there's technology that's already here, maybe used somewhere, maybe in the lab, that may seem incredible sci-fi, but it's already there. But there's another part of it that you can riff off of, which is that, yes, you may have sci-fi technology, but you're going to have uneven distribution in terms of wealth, right? And so, yes, you'll have a world of driverless cars, drones overhead, but you'll still have crime, you'll still have homeless, you'll still have politics. Even to that example that you gave of Google Glass or whatever the next version of it, we play with that in an opening scene where the main character sort of observes as they're looking at a crowd. You can tell the rich and the young, because they're wearing the glasses staring off into space, whereas the old and the poor are looking down at their screens.
Right.
Which is, now it's the young look down at their screens, are lost in that, but, move it forward a generation, the people still stuck with the old, iPhone, they're not going to have the same as the new tech. So you get that. The veterans part of it, that was a riff off of real world history, of the encampments in the bonus army that came to DC. Now let's get really kind of scary. In the wake of a national economic crisis where the veterans were angry at the federal government for not living up to its promises, and in particular for feeling that for not delivering the aid that they basically the president at the time, that's President Hoover, says it's not federal government responsibility. And so there's a march on Washington and the bonus army, and they stay. And then in one of the darker moments in American civil military history, active duty forces under General MacArthur are used to crush the veterans forces. And actually, if I remember the history right, not only do you have multiple injuries, but you have a couple civilians killed, including, if I remember, a pregnant woman.
It was a pregnant woman.
Eisenhower describes it just like this damn full moment that he wished had never happened. And he was MacArthur's aide at that point.
Yeah, there was a lot of big players in that event too. They called it Hooverville, was the camp of the and they had the cavalry charge with fixed bayonets. I mean, these were our military forces going up against our veterans, and Patton was involved. Eisenhower was involved. I mean, the whole, everyone thinks that these are, I always kind of look back at history when people like to hey, let's put this guy on a pedestal. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, General MacArthur was in charge of this stuff, and General Patton, drove, he was part of this stuff too. Are you seeing, I don't want to say, do you see that coming, but I mean, you guys are pretty damn good at predicting shit. Are you seeing something getting that close? I almost feel like there's something happening, like we're waiting for something to spark. Are you guys getting that feeling too when it comes to that?
I think
I won't know if I say though. Here, I'll jump on it real quickly. Then I don't know if you get like the specificity of a bonus army moment, but I think pull back on it. We have a industrial revolution going on right now. Massive rewiring of the economy. Those are challenging at any time in history, but it's also playing out amidst an America that's more divided than it's been in multiple generations, more divided economically, culturally, politically, you name it. So it would have been difficult to go through these changes anyway in the best of times, all the more so when you throw in, the division, you throw in the people, directly trying to amplify that division, whether it's domestic or foreign actors, you throw in a pandemic. I mean, this is, we're not unique in sort of feeling that worry that's there. But, you go back to what you said before, it doesn't necessarily have to play out that way. There's these moments where history can take a turn one way or the other. There's marker moments, and we can think about the what ifs, just looking back over the last year. What if we had done things differently on coronavirus? We would be having a very different, my kids would be going to school. Right. And if we'd just done a couple of things different, learning from what other nations actually did, or there's marker moments in, of course, different military history and operations. Think about the difference of, I just watched, it was not a great movie, but I was entertained because I'm at home. Midway. Think about Battle of Midway, this incredible historic moment. And it's all decided by, individual action in just a couple of minutes. And so that we like to play with the trends. We like to unpack them, explain them. Some things we want to warn of them. Other things is just for pure entertainment sake. But, it doesn't, I guess, it isn't necessarily dystopian because you can steer in another direction. You don't have to play that out.
There's another way, to think about that too, which is the influence of technology on these potential scenarios. And, the presence, for example, in the opening of Burn-In, of not only the kind of future bonus army, but also these other aspects to the experience of living inside the Beltway, like traffic. Really understanding that, you can design and implement and, make the autonomous car, for example, an everyday, piece of technology. And you're still going to have many of the same human problems that we experience today, but there just might be slightly different reasons. It could be the algorithms of the different self-drive services are jockeying for position and creating effectively the same problem we tried to engineer our way out of. And so in many ways, considering these sorts of dualities to technologies is really the only honest, if not ethical, way to really think through, how they will be implemented. And I don't think that happens enough. Your point about, could we have another scenario like, what we portray in the book, or other sea change type paradigm shifts where the things that we assume to be one way, could be literally upended. And it does feel like we are at that point. And that's not something that's been consistent in my life where I felt like that, but that certainly does, speak to me, hearing you say that. And so the way I kind of deal with that is by, working on a book like Burn In, because even before COVID, we were starting to kind of feel like that was the case. And I'm therefore also constantly kind of looking outside the country too, like where are these other areas that are really, really potentially either dangerous or interesting, right? Because I'm not a total, dystopian, minded pessimist, right? Like I like to say I'm an optimist who stares into the abyss.
Yeah, true.
So I'd like to believe that, we can find inspiration and we can do better. That the collective good, that we as this very kind of chaotic system that we have, can ultimately get us to a better place. As hard as that can be to see sometimes, but it's certainly true though that, what you're saying resonates with me.
Did you I guess when you were, did you see, I mean, this is both for both of you guys. Are you seeing that other countries using technology during this COVID crisis actually helped them a lot, or was it to their detriment?
I think a lot of the failings have been, ultimately human or political in many cases, and that I think speaks to the, right now, for example, if you look at the valuation of the NASDAQ, right, it's like, I think $17 trillion. So by all rights, like if you looked, America must be able to use its internet enabled technologies, its companies, its champions to get our way, out of this, very unfortunate mess. That's not been the case at all. So I don't know that technology is really it's certainly part of the solution, but it's not the answer, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that I think comes down to the kind of leadership that we need in the 21st century, right? We have to be able to have both competence and credibility in the public domain with people who have very, very different ideas about solutions, and yet be able to leverage those very same technologies to implement them perhaps quicker than we ever had to before. And a pandemic is a perfect, model for that, in part because of the way that, these things sort of grow exponentially when they really start to spread. And that's, today this is a biological event, but there could be digital equivalents, that have that same spreading pattern, whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's again, the equivalent of a digital COVID.
Right.
So I feel like, the technology isn't really the problem, and nor is it necessarily the solution. Ultimately, we're kind of talking about human leadership.
Yeah, I was 100% agreement with August on that. There's, it is not like the other nations that have, weathered this storm so much better than us, have access to some kind of super secret different technology, or that they had access to some other different super secret information, nor that they had far wildly greater budgets than us. It's simply put, it was a policy decision. So, you compare, for example, the level of testing availability in other nations compared to here. And, that you think about just how, it just stunning and frustrating. And then the numbers on it are crazy. So it's policy decisions, it's political decisions. This did not have to be. And so, whether you're talking about the Australias, the Taiwans, the Canadas, again, you can look across what they're wildly different in geography. They're wildly different in population size. They're the Germanys, even Italy was once the case of, our warning of what could happen to us. And then, we plowed right ahead. And then,
right.
So the scale of this did not have to happen. So it's not a tech problem like so much else. It's a political, a strategy problem. It's so unfortunate.
No, you're right. Especially when there's egos and different leanings at stake, because then it becomes then that's where the implementation. I mean, we can just go into the subject of Light War. Could you tell the audience what the book Light War is about?
So Light War it's a nonfiction book that is on the weaponization of social media. So essentially, sort of the underlying way of thinking about it is, 15 years ago, we began to wrestle with the idea of cyber war, the hacking of networks. And I say we began to wrestle with it, everything from you saw the creation of, new military commands, cyber command, to new positions in corporations like CISOs, to, we all learned about how to have better passwords. And what we've seen is the emergence of its evil twin, so to speak, that we call Light War. And it is not about the hacking of networks, but about the hacking of people on the networks by driving ideas viral through a mix of likes and shares and sometimes lies. And, the parallels with cybersecurity continue. So, yes, there's network activity, but it's actually about shaping the real world. So if you think about, someone hacking a network, they're stealing zeros and ones to, build their own version of that jet fighter, or they're stealing zeros and ones, credit card information to, buy a sports car with it, whatever, if they're a Russian cyber criminal. In Light War, same thing. You're driving something viral for the real world effect. So, for example, the opening of the book is the Battle of Mosul, and it digs into how ISIS used social media not only to persuade some 30,000 people from over the 90 countries to join a group made up of, people they'd never met before to travel to Iraq and Syria, but it also, they were using it for battlefield operations. It's part of the story of how they take over the city of Mosul. But it jumps from that to Donald Trump's very first tweet. Donald Trump himself says he would not be president without social media. It jumps from that to, we go across these different examples from politics to how Taylor Swift used it to rise to the top of her game.
Right.
So that's what the book is about how social media is, it's a weapon, and it's a weapon like anything else that can be used for both good and bad. So we have a bit of fun with, the parallelism of ISIS propaganda and Ice Bucket Challenge, which was equally a weaponization of social media, a designed operation, but it was one for good, right? It was a good thing. Circling back to your earlier question, we see all those phenomena at play right now. So, we've seen it, social media become part of surfacing current and historic evils and mobilizing people against them, but it's also been used to, foment division. Going back to the coronavirus discussion, there are thousands of people that would be alive today if not for what's been called by public health professionals the infodemic. So the infodemic is all the misinformation and disinformation that surrounded coronavirus and been spread online and made it harder to deal with it, and everything from the policy to false stories about medical treatment to, oh, it's just like the flu, don't worry about it. 200,000 people dead later.
August,
we're recording this at nighttime, so I've had a long day of work and being professional.
You can say it. Yeah, go for it, man.
Literally, the name of this is WTF Nation, so you can hear it in my tone.
All you, baby, all you. Go ahead, August. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
August is cringing, but
No, I mean, we're at a point, I think, where you're looking at the ability to handle the amount of information around us is completely out of whack with like what's being pushed to us. And this is like something that I think a lot about, what is the future of, tactical soft, right? Like, where is it going to be this, looking at like the SOCOM transformation from kind of the Iron Man suit type idea of Talos to this hyper enabled operator, which is like really more about information than like moving heavy stuff. In our own kind of like civilian lives or in your everyday sense, we're kind of going through a similar, I think, shift where we've had this menu of like opportunities through technology that we've thought were going to deliver us from the burdens of like being human. And the reality is they're not. And in many cases, they're going to exacerbate a lot of the really trying parts of the human condition. And so I think part of what the discipline of being successful as a person, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your work, whether it's being like, a very kind of, I think, patriotic American, I'll use that word in this context, is really like shutting out a lot of like this crap in the noise. And being able to focus on what is important for you and your family, and doing so in a way that I think has kind of a holistic appreciation of like, what we need to do to kind of create that resilient, society that can weather not just, the potential conflict with China, but the certain arrival of automation, through software and everyday robotics, that can weather the kind of transition that many of us who have families are dealing with our kids being home when we're also trying to work and, stay productive, keep them healthy, because that's it. Like that's what really matters. And so, the world is not going to get simpler. It's not going to get less complicated. In fact, it's maybe going to get more shrill or acute, in terms of the kind of the acuity of the moment that we're going to be feeling. But whether it is or not, again, depends on how much of this you're listening to, in the algorithmic sense, what's being pushed to you over a social media feed. But that discipline is hard. I check like Twitter and my email, within minutes of waking up. I don't do it in bed because I do not keep my phone in my room. But that's like I've been rewired. And part of the reason why I left journalism and chose this kind of like more exploratory type of work was to be able to spend time thinking and really kind of having that flexibility and freedom to use that like mental space differently. But this larger kind of digital ecosystem, this digital economy, that is tied into that, kind of $17 trillion market cap of the NASDAQ. That's not all tech companies, to be clear, but what I'm saying, that's not predicated on us having that discipline and that ability to be able to kind of ward off that intrusion. And so that's something that I wrestle with a lot, like personally, as someone who's trying to be creative and a good person and all that. But I think is also actually directly linked to many of the things we've been talking about tonight.
Right. Well, you weren't lying about it. A lot of it's exacerbating the human psyche too. When it comes to there's individuals that think this shit's dire. They think that what's happening right now is extinction level event, and there's others that are just whatever. And then there's those in the middle. Those that are dire on the human psyche. There are some individuals that have gone with having a normal system of life, have coped with that system of life, and then COVID, the lockdowns, you can't go out, you got to do digital learning. Matter of fact, you can't even register your vehicle. Things that that you're normed. Hey, okay, I need to go pay my registration, so I guess I go. Nope, DMV's closed. Well, as a matter of fact, DMV's closed until 90 days over the expiration date. Well, in our human mind, and what we're conditioned to, we're like, no, that's illegal, and that leads to it really starts pressing on individuals that are not used to that adjustment. I mean,
that's certainly true. And again, to the exploitation avenues that an adversary has, in a totally non-kinetic, non-traditional military approach, that's really like exactly what you're trying to get at. If you're trying to disrupt a functioning society. And we're of course not just going to see that exploited by, the kind of bogeymen that we have today,
right?
But small groups, individuals, because again, algorithmically, that's increasingly possible to scale these kinds of campaigns with very little effort. That's been proven again and again, and to me, that is potentially extremely destabilizing, not just in the whole of society sense, but almost in your family sense. I mean, I don't know how many accounts do you have to hear of people who are really at loggerheads with loved ones,
right,
over their perception of reality right now,
right?
Essentially, right? I mean, you're having those kinds of fundamental conversations about what is real and what is not. And I don't think we thought that when the 90s, when this this movement was taking place, that we would be distorting our society to that effect. And yet, really, we're still in the genesis of this larger, connected experiment, and looking at a lot of the data that is going to be created and produced by not just our online movements and kind of social networks, but rather the everyday devices that we have. Internet of Things explosion that's coming, depending on which models you look at, but you're going to have literally like a limitless amount of information produced by everything from like your toilet, to your running shoes,
Yes.
To your car,
Right.
And that has incredible implications for warfare. Data is the new ammunition.
Yep.
To, of course, these sorts of internecine conflicts that are sometimes going to be political, be very local, but also certainly about the very kind of character of the societies that they're essentially being conducted within. And that's going to be very challenging for kind of the, not to be too wonky, but like the security architecture of the 20th century that we've carried over. Whether it's big organizations like NATO, whether it's even our own militaries and the way that they're recruiting and training and supporting. A lot of that is going to be incredibly impacted by that in ways that we still don't really actually know.
Let's get into Ghost Fleet. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm gonna jump this from you asked about Like War, but also it lashes up with Burn-In. But I'm gonna connect it to Charlie Brown.
Okay.
And what it is. So when August said, this is the genesis of all of this. So if we think about this is the weaponization of social media, in many ways, what we've seen play out over the last couple of years is the equivalent of Snoopy and his biplane compared to what's coming in, World War II and beyond. So the tactics, for example, that has been, was utilized by ISIS or utilized by Russian information warriors, first targeting Ukraine and then Hungary, Poland, Brexit, US. This is early stage stuff. The addition of artificial intelligence into it is what takes this all to the next level. It takes it to the next level in terms of making it harder to discern truth and falsehood, reality and what's fake. So, for example, the concept of deep fakes, where you're literally generating imagery that is soon to be impossible for the human eye to detect whether it's real or not.
That's correct.
And like everything that we've talked about, it's going to be and is already here and has been used for fun. It's been used for ads and jokes and marketing, and it'll be weaponized. We actually had the first rollout of this, like so much else in the coronavirus pandemic. Someone manipulated a speech that the Belgian premier gave, but altered what they said. But so we've got that aspect of it. But the other thing that Burn-In wrestles with is this mass tracking that August referenced, where everything that's out there is a collector of information. It's not just people with their cell phones. It's your smart toilet. It's the smart car. It's the thermostat that allows you to understand all sorts of things that people are doing in that room. And so that not only creates this trail behind you wherever you go, that here again will be used to make your life so much better, so much more convenient, but it'll also be marketized against you to sell things to you, and it'll be weaponized against you. But it's not just about looking backward. What AI does is it allows prediction. What are they going to do next? Where are they going to go next? What are they maybe going to buy next? Are they going to maybe commit a crime next? And even more so, it allows influence. How can we shape what they're going to do next? The route that they take. And the influence might be in ways that are obvious, and it might be in subtle, behind the scenes manner. So the route that you go next, it might, steer you, hey, if you just go over here, there's your favorite latte is waiting for you, and it's 30% off. We've already made it for you, but just go 20 feet over here. Or maybe someone paid for the algorithm to walk you by there. Or also there might be battlefield versions of this where, much like we've already seen in sports, you will project the route that a patrol is going to take. Or you might nudge them to take that route. I saw a version of this in a Marine command post that was testing out certain technologies where it was basically doing a military version of a Waze map recommendation, but it wasn't steering the route based on time. It was steering on expected casualties.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
And that's sci-fi. That feels so sci-fi,
it does.
right?
It does.
But this was not dreamed up. This was me seeing it and going, ooh, that's maybe the basis of a really interesting, not, a story either. And then I was thinking about it in terms of that's a court martial waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Someone listens to the advice of the machine or not on expected casualties.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. Isn't that's the bridge, and I think that's the gap there of what we're willing to embrace militarily. If we're going to listen to a machine or listen to AI march us in a specific route on casualty expectation, is that an ethics issue? Is that something that's going to be, you know what I mean? You can't just say following orders and, well, who told you? The Waze map that told me to go this patrol. You know what I mean? There's going to have to be, what is the oversight on this? What would be the oversight?
Play it out both ways, because it's either so you follow that route and let's do the scenario, you take greater casualties. Well,
right.
The officer will say, machine told me to do it, not my fault.
Right.
But let's say you don't follow it and you take lower casualties than the machine projected. We'll say, wow, you showed moral courage. You didn't listen to that dumb old machine.
Right.
Human being wins again.
Right.
But let's play it out the other way. You don't follow it and you take the casualties. Then we'll say, you didn't listen to the best advice, and people are dead now because of that.
Right.
And so, so this is a military law question. It's an ethics question, but it's also an operational, we could think through the doctrine things. Oh, let's add in an enemy looking at that system and going, okay, how do I, game that? How do I manipulate it? Or to go to the Ghost Fleet scenario, how do I get into that system? Because if anything that's ever been networked has the potential of being hacked. So how do I get into that system and maybe manipulate it in another way?
But it wasn't. But Ghost Fleet actually has a piece of true to life events. Wasn't the compromise of the F-35 in its system?
Yeah. So in all our books, they're novels within notes. So every time there is a technology, there is a place, there is even a kind of attack. It's not us dreaming it up out of nothing. This is the smash up with the nonfiction side. There's a reference, there's a citation for you to be able to see how that is real, how it's that system may sound like sci-fi, but it already exists.
Right.
Or that kind of cyber attack, that's already happened somewhere, or here's a report about it. So that's where we've tried to bring these two things together. You get the excitement of the story, so for some people it's just a fun, if we weren't dealing with the pandemic, we'd describe it as like a fun read on the plane when
right,
you're
right.
When you're going off to your beach vacation.
Right.
For other people it's hey, I want to learn more about that, but I can do it in a way where I don't have to read that boring white paper or suffer through a PowerPoint.
Well, back in April 2009, I think it was part of the Wall Street Journal reporting team that broke that Chinese spies had breached the F-35 program. And at the time, quite a few people were like, "Oh, what's the big deal? This cyber thing is not a significant threat." And what's interesting about that is you walk that forward to Ghost Fleet 6 years later, where we're explaining exactly why supply chain vulnerabilities can directly contribute to the downing, like an F-35 in the scenario that we envision. And suddenly what you're doing is you're taking something from the realm of the, abstract, and that's arguably a front page news story, to, making quite clear to a potentially, interested or half interested audience in within the government that no, this is a thing, that this is something which has extreme consequences, and especially for, a mainstay aircraft like that. And that, I think, is where, a lot of what went into Ghost Fleet was understanding the kinds of vulnerabilities that were real, that were known in the open source sense, and yet weren't being taken seriously. Because if you could helpfully explain to people, that these are not abstract technical challenges that just need to be addressed, or, like a problem ticket, from an IT help call, that actually these were really going to jeopardize our ability to, do what we had taught ourselves and convinced ourselves in the U.S. that we could prevail over the Chinese PLA, Air Force, PLA Navy, et cetera, in the Pacific, that suddenly you would be able to actually say, okay, no, actually, let's pause and assess, is this a threat that we think it is, and therefore can we do something about it? And that can we do something about it conversation changed, thankfully, with the book, with NOSD, the Office of Secretary of Defense. And there's plenty of anecdotes like that that came out, I think, after seeing the way that people started to use narratives like that to understand the threats better. For their consequences, not just in the discrete technical sense. And so that's a good outcome if that's the case when someone reads your book.
No, well, not to mention the fact, like you were just talking about that, because there was a case where several tech firms were charged, I think, for using bad microchips in processing for some of the systems, and it brought to light that maybe we may not have thought, okay, just microchips, but after reading Ghost Fleet, I was like, oh my god, this is legit bad malware chips, and you could just be flying along thinking everything's all copacetic, about ready to go deliver your mission, and then all of a sudden everything just starts going haywire, and then you're either either killed or your aircraft's disabled.
That scene actually came out of a real incident where it was not deliberately done, but it happened. We could sort of describe it inadvertently, where there were U.S. Navy. What was it? Helicopters. Seahawks. That the infrared and the targeting system on them stopped working, and in figuring out why they stopped working, it was a flawed chip in the system. And the chip in the system, it hadn't been sabotaged. It was one of these things where the contractor got it from the subcontractor, from the subcontractor, from the subcontractor, and 7 layers back, it was basically a counterfeit that had come out of literally a back of a warehouse in China. And so it was this thing that had not been done deliberately, but it was in part inspiration of, what had happened inadvertently, a flawed chip causing a weapon system not to work. This had shown that it could be done deliberately. And then we matched that up with, everything from a DARPA study on how many chips were riven through various systems to other research on what you call hardware hacking. And basically it was, it's funny to think about because it's been talked about so much right now, but back then it was novel, was, hey, there are consequences to this historic change of having a strategic competitor, but relying on them for large parts of your supply chain. And it's not just that they might not provide the supplies in the middle of the war, it's also that they might bake in vulnerabilities and take advantage of them as part of the war itself.
Of course. There was a recent, and this is just an offshoot right here, there was a recent demonstration between artificial intelligence against an actual fighter pilot. Did you guys hear about that?
Yes.
And I tried to get my daughter to watch that with me.
Yeah.
And the poor F-16 guy. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
He
never. As I've joked, he might have to change his call sign to John Henry.
well, see, that's my thing. Was it because now there's a Top Gun instructor, a Navy pilot, who says, the AI pilot would have crashed and burned, and I'm thinking, okay, what?
And guess what? That was actually part of how it won,
right?
Because it was able to undertake maneuvers that were too dangerous for any human to do. And it didn't care.
It didn't care, exactly. It was going what it was programmed to do. Now, within that fight,
there's one other detail I don't know if you heard about.
Go for it.
That so there was a stage to it. The first was multiple different AI systems competing against each other, and then the winner took on the AI. The winner, the F-16 pilot, was able to watch the competition and see the tactic that the winner was using. And so he actually, going into it, knew what it was going to try the first time and had already kind of developed his counter, but it still didn't work ultimately. So he actually had an added advantage over the AI that, you might not have in other situations. He basically had the adversary's playbook, and it still didn't work out for him.
Right. Almost like it was almost like he had the play card, but not realizing that the adaptability of the AI in itself was able to react to that.
Yeah.
August, did you think this pilot was going to win?
I wasn't expecting the human pilot to win. In part because we've just seen that over time you'll be able to come up with novel solutions. So it wasn't necessarily that the machine would be faster in terms of reflexes or the kind of normal comparisons, but rather the creativity, if that's the word I could use to describe the kind of solution that the Alpha Dog fight winner came up with.
Right.
And I think that also speaks to something else that's really important in thinking through not only how like air combat, for example, will change when you have the removal of pilots in most aircraft, but also aircraft themselves are going to have to change. They're going to have to be cheaper and attritable, which means like almost like disposable, to be able to conduct the kind of missions that will very likely be very high quote unquote high casualty, but in the machine sense. This is a massive paradigm shift, because we're fielding aircraft that are $100 million, $220 million, depending on what you're flying, rather than $1 million, $2 million, kind of cruise missile type prices. And that's actually, I think, the way that combat aviation is going to have to go, and for the bulk of the fleets, that kind of this quantity has its quality, is a quality of its own, is going to be back, but with a completely modern, or really futuristic twist on it. But that's incredibly disruptive because you have a service like the Air Force, even the Navy, which has incredible cultural cachet, and its tactical aviation and strike aviation communities, and suddenly that could be upended, and that will, I think, speak again to this kind of human factor that's really important whether you're writing fiction or just trying to think through in policy, budget for that matter, how these things are actually going to take shape. And then you can identify potential impediments, to getting to that reality as fast as possible, because that's what an adversary is going to do. They're going to be racing towards that outcome, right? They're not wed to the same systems. And that to me, is an incredible strategic vulnerability that we have, because we can build such, magnificent aircraft, that's all we want to do. We have a whole economic kind of system predicated upon that, of course, a political system that supports that, but yet that actually may not be the force that we need. And if your strategy and your force are misaligned, then that's a recipe for incredible risk. That's not just like the public policy, student in me saying that, but that's just like the reality of particularly the Asia Pacific.
Not to mention,
there's an important takeaway from that that dogfight and the point that August is making. That's a larger future, and it's really the core theme of the Burn-In book, which is the issue is not human versus machine and complete human replacement. Rather, whether you're talking about air warfare to the field of medicine to we spoke to a group of Wall Street traders, to you're thinking about what's playing out on highways. The core question is human machine teaming. What does the team look like? What does the partnership look like? And that's what wins out. So if a lot of people made the parallel of this AI dogfight of Garry Kasparov, the chess master, versus losing to the AI for the first time.
Right.
But move it forward. Actually, it's human and AI beat AI in the current thing, and that's in chess. And it'll be the same thing in warfare. It's even the same thing in the Terminator movies. Guess what? Once you got past the first one, they're all about human and machine teaming up to take on AI.
That's a good comparison. Well, and I was just about ready to say there was doctrine updating having the UCAV, the unmanned combat air vehicle, that was to do that, to fly simultaneously, almost like combat wingmen, to do the dirty work. Ahead of the manned aircraft.
Yeah, that's the question.
Right.
The question is not whether you're going to have human machine teaming. It's what's that team look like?
Right.
In which scenario, in which space, what's the best? So it might be, one is the wingman model, and
Right.
literally the Air Force is working on that. It might be, instead the team is more like police officer and police dog, where, they're a team, but they're not equals, and they're
Right.
delegating out. There might be another where it's it's more so like to give a different parallel, a quarterback calling plays, and the robotic systems are out there, and each of them are doing different parts of the plays. The equivalent of some of them defending, some of them route running, whatever. So, but it's the human at that. No, maybe it's it's swarming there, and everything I just said. Take the scenario. Is it a ground combat? Is it air combat? No, we're talking about how you do delivery of packages. No, we're thinking about what the highway looks like. That question of human machine teaming is really the essence of it moving forward. And then you throw in, what about where it's my plan, but I'm going directly against someone else?
Right.
What's their package look like? What's their strategy? What's their team look like? How are they reacting to the choices that I made?
Right.
So again, that's what just like Moby Dick is really not a story about a hunt for a whale. Burn-In, it's a hopefully people will enjoy. It's a fun hunt for a terrorist, but it also sort of unpacks for people that the real issue moving forward is, what do these teams look like? And then you get to take it back to the sci-fi side, which is, whoa, human and machine working together.
Right.
That's like sci-fi, but it's also like every, great buddy cop movie. Like, those are really fun narrative things to play with.
I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh, it's coming.
Awesome. August. So,
or is it Training Day?
Yeah, or that. Yeah, good.
Equally another ride along.
Right. Exactly. August, do you think that with that right there, the use of drones and swarm technology would be able to stop it? We would be able to stop it.
It's not really clear, because the notion of swarm is a pretty interesting one, because it's often, for example, conceived of as like clouds of like very homogeneous little buzzing quadcopters or things with wings. In the way that I've been thinking about it is a little different, which is like the heterogeneity, right? Like that you have almost like a bundle of different systems that are each or in groups different enough in capability, but also vulnerability, so that you're able better perhaps to thwart a threat that you may not have been able to anticipate. So if whether it's considering like an autonomous wingman, and how do you combat an adversary that's using like a fifth generation fighter, like a Chinese heavy fighter, alongside like 3 or 4 different kind of like belt fed missile trucks, if you will, that
Right.
can fly at supersonic or near supersonic speeds to engage at like 200 miles away or 250, like super long range, but within the bounds of normalcy. How do you defend against that? If you're an oncoming, American, fighter squadron or, flight. And so I would think that you're going to be better able to do that by not kind of trying to recreate the same capability the adversary has. That's certainly, I think, a lesson from the Chinese military development of the last, 7 to 8 years, which is they're not trying to, recreate, the U.S. Navy, at sea for the PLAN. They have their own twist, right? And the way that they're using information, whether they're using AI, the way they're using cyber, reflect that, but also in hardware. And so to me, if you can think about like that cycle, the kind of, defense development, the OODA loop and kind of decision making, observe, orient, decide, and act. If you can kind of get inside that adversary of being able to kind of confront any technological threat, because you cannot anticipate them all, particularly when, you see, I think, pretty successful utilizations of like data from China's civilian tech companies that I think are going to be kind of their cornerstones on what they do on the defense side.
Right.
And that to me, speaks to, again, a much more unconventional approach to this rather than just sort of scaling up. The Navy wants to have, 330 vessels or so.
Right.
Why isn't it 3,300?
Right.
And they don't look anything like the ships that they're making in Bath, in Maine or the other shipyards, et cetera.
Right.
And I think that to me is kind of a wholesale recalibration that touches on a lot of areas, but seems probably like the most likely to be successful approach.
Okay, finally, burn-in. What, I mean, again, I'm not, like I said before we opened up mics, what is the story? What is the story? Can you give us the synopsis of Burn-In? Either of you guys can go ahead and just jump right in.
I'll lead off on that. So Burn-In, as Pete said earlier, is like a new, kind of novel, in that, we're taking many of the same approaches we took in Ghost Fleet, where we're looking into the future, but we're rooting all the technologies in reality. So when you read about the story of FBI agent Laura Keegan, she's a counterterrorism agent in the Bureau, former Marine robot wrangler. And, her job essentially is to try to uncover a conspiracy from essentially, a villain who's trying to use, technology against, America itself. And this is at a point where the country has been essentially, leaned heavily into robotics and automation in the software sense, that has, by and large, broken the social contract, created incredible economic opportunity for a few people, but left, increasingly large numbers of people behind. And that includes our agents' own family. And so, we don't shy from trying to understand what this future is like, not just in the kind of normal thriller sense, the kind of tactical situations, the typical kind of chases and things like that, but really understanding what's it like to live in that world. What's it like to be a parent? What's it like to be a spouse? What's it like to be, an employee, in the Bureau? And, we're kind of trying to kind of navigate this, new world. And that felt like the most, realistic way to actually portray that future. And so the hope is when you can read a book like this really quickly, because it's fast paced, it has all the kind of hallmarks of a good thriller, you're also going to know a lot more about artificial intelligence. You're going to know a lot more about robotics, and you understand your future, I think, with more clarity. And so there's a lot of insight kind of wrapped up in there that you may not even realize you're reading. It's not a didactic book, right? We're not trying to cram it down people's throats, but the hope is that, you can read it on Saturday and Sunday and go to work Monday and be like, oh boy, I got to do a few things differently.
I think my I have to put it down to do other stuff because it's grabbing me that much. I have to. I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh wow, okay. And then someone's telling me that I have a Zoom call.
Have the nightmares started yet? Because that's often a side effect of the books, right?
I think that's Peter's little. I think that's his mojo right there. If I start getting some redlined nightmares about going in libraries and studies on my own and hearing a door knock, then I have to be worried, which is one of the scenes in the book.
See, we've tried to put a more pleasant spin on it, which is that we're both dads. Burn-In is like sneaking fruit and veggies into your kid's morning smoothie, right? It's a fun techno thriller, but there's 300 explanations, predictions of everything from how does AI work to, what's the next special forces sniper rifle, to legal ethical questions, what is algorithmic bias, but you get it all packaged within a techno thriller where you follow, hopefully we're excited for people to meet the characters, to meet the central character, Keegan, and then the partner Tams. Hopefully they're going to, fall in love with them as much as we have as creators. So, hopefully if it gives you nightmares, they're the good kind of nightmares that cause us to act to prevent the actual thing from coming true. But for a lot of people, hopefully it's just a fun ride.
The nightmares for me is the people, not the machines. The people in the story are kind of like, they have me kind of like, okay, I don't trust this dude or whatever. Maybe this guy is sounding too much. But Tams, first off, what would it sound like? If you could put an actor's voice on it, what would Tam sound like?
I don't want to spoil someone's relationship with this fictitious robot, but I will reveal a little of the book in doing so, which is our main character has to answer the same question, right? Because designers of these sorts of systems often make assumptions that we want, whether it's a female voice like Siri, right? And our protagonist Laura Keegan is a combat veteran. She is, deployed with robots. She has fought alongside robots, and not like the big battle bots that you might have, read about like in a, other sorts of sci-fi books are seen on the screen, but rather the kind of more realistic, smaller is beautiful type systems that are, sneaking down alleys and looking into windows and things like that.
Carrying your
and so
rucksack.
she's like, I'm not falling for this, I'm going to like the robot more because it talks to me in a certain way. Like, and that I think it really speaks a lot to the kind of utilitarian approach to technology that she has, that I think is really critical to the book being a useful guide, if you will, to understanding how this might actually work out.
What would be the best? Everyone's asking me now some of the questions. What would be the best? I guess, would it be better to read Burn In first or Go Sleep first and then Burn In? What would be the sequence of events? Which should readers start at?
That is a great question. I would say that they are essentially unrelated stories. But if you read Go Sleep first, there are a couple of Easter eggs in Burn In that speak to the fact that they're not in unrelated universes.
Almost like the Marvel universe. We're all like sync. It's all. I got that too. I know what you're talking about. There is one. Yeah, especially there's one in there that I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, Marvel.
So the events of Burn In don't rely on you having read Ghost Fleet. You can read Burn In, enjoy it. All the real world stuff doesn't rely on the fictionalized scenario of it, but there are, like August said, there's a couple little things for Ghost Fleet fans to enjoy in there.
Awesome. And then Like War, of course, that should be, and we've talked this, that should be a PAO's freaking a public affairs officer in any military unit. That should be their side handbook. That right there should be right along with their engagement SOP, because there's some time, like right now we were discussing in the beginning the some of the release of events and messaging. Do we think timing would have been good for a release of a story or not? I just find it fascinating that all this right here, especially in the platforms, like right before we went live, how many platforms we're already broadcasting on. Algorithmically, people are going to get this. There is going to be some push to have somebody from WTF Nation Radio, U.S. Army WTF Moment, that would have liked it. That, of course, the web of the algorithm would have kicked off. I don't want Twitter to shut us down, because then they'll think that we're using this for whatever. But because and it's funny because you were talking about leanings. It's back and forth. Like, for instance, right now we're on two different pages live. We're even on Twitch, the platform where kids play video games at. I mean,
love it.
So we're also playing to an audience that that's another question. That is this material youth? Is the youth should be grabbing this and consuming this, or is it set up for the older mindset? Do you think the old should read this?
I'd like to have everybody read Burn In, especially because it affects all aspects of the lives that we think we're going to have in the next 10 years. China, and whether it does the audacious things it does in Ghost Fleet, are certainly up for debate. But I can unequivocally tell you that what is coming down the road technologically in Burn In is certainly something that people do need to be ready for. And I don't think that's even a generational question. So I'm hoping, and I suppose every author says something like this, but I really truly am hoping that people can come to the story with that in mind.
Peter, do you think I think both of you chuckled when I said you guys are on Twitch. Do you expect this? Did you expect to be on Twitch?
I play video games, so I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Nothing social media really surprises me anymore. So no. But to your larger question about who do you hope reads it? We've always hoped that our books reach very different audiences who have very different goals with it. As I mentioned, for some people it's an escapist read, it's going to be for fun, it's going to be for entertainment. For other people it's hopefully going to be incredibly useful to them. In an ideal world you get that cross, so the person who is looking for entertainment walks away smarter from it. In turn, the person that's looking for the education of it doesn't have to sort of suffer or slog through it.
Right.
Same thing in terms of backgrounds. I'll just put it this way. While we've had a very different book tour, right? But the audiences that we've spoken to about it, I think, really show the diversity of people that might, find it useful or entertaining. It's been military units that have ranged from special forces to engineering to Navy surface warfare officers. I could go on and on that on the military side. But it's also been in the business world, everything from people in the power industry to banking to finance. Its age range. I've talked on it to a high school class that was, doing remote, as well to a nursing home that was, it was in their, we did the broadcast through, they had a, internal cable TV network just for the retirement community. And it's been a wild, diverse range, and it's been great to see so many different people engage with it. I mean, we also joke, we think we're pretty confident that we've got the strangest collection of endorsers in history. So you've got the current or former heads of CIA, NSA, NATO, Marine Corps, Navy, Special Operations, but then you've also got the creator of Lost and Watchmen and the new Star Trek movies.
Yep.
These are not normal, that's normally, they're not both lining up behind the same thing, but they, pulled from it in some same and in other things, different things that they found useful or fun about it. So it's been great. And, so the short answer to your question of, who do we hope reads it? I mean, in an ideal world, everyone, but we hope it hits these very different audiences rather than being a very specialized book.
Well, you also, didn't you have Max Brooks talk about this too? The creator, the World War Z, exactly. That's legit right there. I mean, I love that book too. That book right there is.
Watchmen doesn't do it for you?
Man. Come on, dude. We're trying to get me busted here. Tweet out Twitter gets. But no, it's awesome. No, you're right, because right now streaming with our audience too. It kind of, I'm introducing our audience to that type of world as well, to make sure that they don't have to click and follow and share and jump on in a dialogue that could be given to them by an adversary. I mean, some of these, especially with, we always like to say in PSYOP, meme warfare is a regular warfare. People don't realize how a meme could get somebody so worked up with the emotions that we want our audiences to know that sometimes you might need to scratch the surface to get below it to make sure that you're not getting fed full of shit. You know what I mean?
I mean that who benefits question, I think, is a critical one when consuming information. It's especially with the manipulation of narrative. It's one of the most important, I think, moments you can kind of take if you pause and read something and say, who benefits.
Right. Well, shit, guys. We have gone over the normal interview time, but again, like I said, we can keep talking all night, but we normally run a 3-hour show. I don't want my boss to get after me. But we thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been an awesome event. And if anything else, any more information or any more books or any more discussions you want to have, feel free to hit us up.
Oh, it's great to be on the show. Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Hold on for a second. I want to put everybody on break, and then we'll sit behind the mic in a minute, and then we'll shoot the breeze some more. All right, guys. This is August Cole and Pete Singer, the authors of Ghost Fleet and Burn-In. Which of course I hope you all read, and of course I hope they hope you read it too. But thanks again for hanging out. We'll be right back, and we'll take a break right quick. Stand by. Shots.
Sanctuary I provide, hide from
wear a condom. We're in Fayetteville. No one gets STDs here.
The voice of U.S. Army, WTF Moments. This is WTF Nation Radio.
And we're back. Man, that was a long interview. Well worth the interview, though. It was awesome. Thank you guys and gals for providing me all the questions and stuff. Some of them were my questions, some of them were your questions. I appreciate it. All the PMs and all that. I didn't take any phone calls during the interview because I'm interviewing the guests. I know I received several ones. I think they were seeing if they were going to like chime in for the push-up portion of the show or something like that.
We love those push-ups.
Yeah, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to be doing, hey, Troop, we're doing push-ups? God, I appreciate Pete and August for coming on. This is so awesome. I love the fact that these guys came on and were able to shoot the breeze. We could have gone further. There were more questions, but Pete had to go, and like I said, I didn't mean to roll right into it. They were talking, I was talking. I was kind of fangirling too. I'll admit it. No, there was some fangirling going on because I was excited to have these individuals as our guests. These are some serious creds. That's like one of the world that I just came from, and it's awesome. So again, like I said, Burn In. It's about an FBI agent chasing a terrorist through DC, and it's got like all uses of tech that are in there. So if you're a tech person, you like using all your Geardo stuff and tech and all that, it's almost integrated within the story to where it's almost like a normal thing, like not a big deal type thing. Whatever. But like they said, you don't have to have a specific order to just, you could read Burn In, you can read Ghost Fleet, and you can read Like War. Those are the 3 books, I think, that's just me, for you to understand that type of use of AI and also that type of use of how social media exploitation works. Social media exploitation, even, I mean, it sounds like a bad word when you say exploitation. Is it not? Is it a good word? Or is it not a good word? Oh shit, here we go. God dang it.
Didn't see who you're talking to, you know?
Yeah, hang on.
Or...
All right, what's up, Stank?
Hey.
Dude, you can't just you can't just like come on in the show when I got guests and stuff coming on. I mean, don't get me wrong, we don't mind customer customer interaction, but bro.
Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. But I mean, I actually had some legitimate questions. You know, this kind of shit that's high end, virtual platforms of B-52s, the weapon systems that can be peeled off by other elements, globally and shit is awesome. Anyway, so it was a great interview, man. Good job, man. And also, too, I apologize about your lack of sleep. It is in my thoughts and prayers tonight.
Where did you hear about that? People talk too much, man. Gosh, man. See, I know you're asking because you care. I know you're asking because you care.
Yeah, that's I've been busy, taking on a new role, dealing with just another bunch of other people's children.
Right.
But nonetheless, I'm not going to keep you late because that clock's late, man.
All right,
you
man.
Got to get up and get your prune juice in the morning. So anyway, thanks for the interview. Really great. I'm going to probably pick up one of these guys' books here. So really good, thorough interview. I appreciate the, maybe not everything is like AI, but at some point you're going to definitely see these network integrated systems globally. With the hypersonic weapons, etc. Awesome stuff. But,
well, I appreciate it, man.
Hope you've been doing good.
Yeah, I have been
doing good.
Yeah, I've been doing good. Just life events are life events are life events. You know what I mean? Everyone's got to go through that stuff. Just like the author said, man. The authors were talking about how all this right now, being in the virtual environment and being having to use social media for doing life things is taken a toll on some families and friends and myself. I'm not saying it's taking a toll, but there are things that I have to get accustomed to. There are things that I had to get used to. I just. Whatever, I got to get used to it. And with the perseverance and the resilience that people have to deal with, it's kind of, I'm watching everybody, go through it. It's some of it's good and some of it's bad, just like anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100% too. And I just can't think of all the historical photos that 20 or 30 years from now are going to be wrecked by everyone in their face masks. Who's that? Well, that's your Uncle Amos. Are you sure? Well, they kind of looks like Uncle Leroy, but
did we have masks? What's up with the mask exactly? But all right, brother. Well, thanks for calling, man. I got to go ahead and do some house cleaning and shit.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah. Get ready to go to bed, old man. We'll talk to you later, buddy.
All right.
Keep the rubber side down.
Of course, man. Win the mind, win the day. All right. Oh, we got stanked.
That was your sleep schedule, man.
Nah, it's okay. Hang on. We're throwing another one here. Every time for first-time callers and listeners, every time Stank has been on the scene since I was a broadcaster here on WTF Nation Radio. And we used to shoot the shit and breeze about a lot of stuff and all that. He'd come in and provide some of his Stankus old man commentary, same mentality. And he kept doing it for a long time. But I'm like, we're gonna create a stinger for you. So every time you come on, we got stanked. And so that's when you hear when you hear this. That means stanked. We got stanked. Love you, brother. At any rate, so thanks again for joining tonight. We'll go ahead and let me see what's going on with housekeeping. What's been going on? Let's see. Oh man, I gotta go back and go through my documents here and see what I'm missing. Hang on, I'm missing some stuff. There's been a lot.
Look in your green book now.
I gotta go through my green book. Exactly that. Let's see. So if you guys we had let's see. God, we had a lot of people going on here. Yeah, I don't even think do we have an updated cut sheet yet? I don't think we have. Yeah, I guess not. I guess so. All right, well, we got a show every night except for, well, actually, we don't have a show every night. I shouldn't say that. We have a show on, this is Sergeant's Time every Thursday with myself, 2000 Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock for those of you that don't habla. And we have Kicking It With Cause on Sunday. There might be a slight change to that a little bit. We'll figure that out. Monday's the Monday edition with myself and Flash. Flash is on a break right now, or Jose, whatever you want to call him. And then Tuesday's Pop Culture Warrior with Michael Carrasquillo, also known as CQ, getting all of the straight up pop culture stuff. There's a lot of more information that's coming out on his realm as far as some of the guests. I'm seeing the guest lists of potential guests for myself and him, and I'm geeked out again. I think we're just gonna have to have him. I'll have to submit myself to some sort of sedation or something like that, so that way I don't go fangirling on some of these guests that we're getting. You know what I mean? I gotta kind of chill out. Tonight's show also kind of kicked off a little bit what we called not a low-key WTF cyber series. So this right here, the next cyber-related historian coming is probably going to be we're trying to kick it between some people from Cyber Center of Excellence. We're probably going to be somebody from 18th Airborne Corps to talk about what initiatives they have. But either or, pay attention and you'll see some more graphics and propaganda and informational materials coming out for that. You got anything for me, man? You've been pretty quiet. We're not gonna do Screenshot Madness because it's freaking late. Thank you. We'll do Screenshot Madness.
I was listening to the guests, man. That was awesome to hear from them about their books, man. I was intrigued. I didn't want to cut them off from it,
Right. I hear you. Well, that's good stuff. Read the books. Like I said, I read Ghost Fleet, read Like War, and I'm halfway through Burn In, and that thing should be a freaking movie. I'm just telling you right now, it should be a freaking movie. So with that, if you don't have anything for me, you can go ahead and you can zonk. You can take off. You can leave. You may be gone. You be gone. No. Anyways, thank you guys and gals for listening tonight. This is Sergeant's Time, of course, with myself, Ice, and y'all have a good night. And Shipper, of course. Thank you for joining us, Shipwreck. I appreciate it, brother. So,
hey, no problem.
All right, man. All right, you have a good night. Peace out.
Hey, this is SEAC retired John Wayne Troxel. You're listening to WTF Nation Radio, the station of choice for all of the badass MFers on the planet.
The voice of U.S. Army, WTF Moments. This is WTF Nation Radio.
Say that we're the best would be an under-exaggeration.
kicking their asses right in the face. Space Force, Space Force. We'll saddle up our intergalactic horse and we'll ride into the sun, yes, into the sun, where we'll take the day by planting a flag right there at its source. Space Force. They say that they've discovered life up there on Mars, so let's blow it all to hell and then claim it for ours. We'll paint the moon red, white, and blue for no other reason than we wanted to. Oh, Jupiter, imagine what you could become. A stupid, pointless planet turned into a giant gun. And Russia, so sorry, have to burst your bubble. Be a good sport, now sit back, relax, and watch us through the Hubble as we celebrate the greatness of the United Planets of America. Space Force, Space Force. We'll saddle up our intergalactic horse and we'll ride into the sun, yes, into the sun, where we'll take the day by planting a flag right there at its source. Space Force. Now we'll go to infinity and beyond, beyond. You'll hear our manly voices singing Space Force strong. The critics say sound doesn't travel in space, to which we reply sound will do as we say. Oh, Captain Kirk, your achievements, though notable and fine, as far as we're concerned, this is Deep Space Mine. And big fans, but Lord Vader, step away from the lightsaber. There can only be one, of course. Space Force. Ra-da-da-da-da-da, ra-da-da, ra-da-da, ra-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum-dum-dum-dum, ra-da-da-da-da-da, ra-da-da, ra-da-da, ra-da-da-da-da-da-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. Space Force, Space Force. We'll saddle up our intergalactic horse and we'll ride into the sun, yes, into the sun, where we'll take the day by planting a flag right there at its source. Space Force. Space Force.
Good evening, boys and girls. This is Tim Kennedy. I'm a Special Forces sniper, a Ranger qualified Green Beret, a UFC fighter. Please listen to us and the shenanigans that we're going to say. We will insult you. There will be racial slurs. We will be sexist. We will offend you. But there will be magic and a unicorn will be raped. So enjoy the show. Thank you for listening on WTF Nation Radio.